Chapter 160. He took out his phone and glanced at it. Because of the rain, the signal was very weak. It's raining. Let's go to Gaoya town now. My eyelids keep twitching. After editing the message, Su Qingsang deleted it. What was wrong with her? She sent messages like this to Hu Jinyao for no reason. Not to mention that he wasn't here now. Even if he was, he still had to go to the place he wanted to go. Let's go to Gaoya town now. It will probably take a while for us to settle down. I'll contact you when we get there. A few minutes later, she received a reply from Hu Jinyao. Give him a kiss. Remember to take care of yourself. Don't tire yourself out. Looking at the affectionate emoji sent by Hu Jinyao, Su Qingsang's uneasiness disappeared. I know. You too, he replied, feeling that his tone wasn't intimate enough. But that was already her limit. Thank you for your concern, my wife. Honey, don't forget to miss me. Su Qingsang looked at that sentence and seemed to be able to imagine Hu Jinyao's expression at that moment. She chuckled. He lifted his eyes to look out of the window, and the smile on his lips could not be suppressed. Miss him? Of course he wanted to. However, she did not want to tell him. The road to Gaoya town was basically a mountain road. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. The people in the car looked at the rain and were not in the mood to chat. He only hoped that this part of the journey would be smoother. Halfway through the car, the driver suddenly braked. Su Qingsang fastened her seatbelt. Otherwise she might have flown out. Not good, there seems to be a landslide in front. The driver looked at the windshield that was constantly being washed by the rain, and his expression was solemn. There were 2 cars in their group. Director Li poked his head out. Can we rush over? Let me try. The driver's face was livid as he quickly stepped on the accelerator. Su Qingsang wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The landslide in front of them was severe and big rocks kept rolling down. Before the driver could rush over, a few large rocks rolled down. Their car was stuck in the middle of the road, unable to move. The cars behind also stopped. Rocks were still rolling down from above. The driver drove the car to the side where there was a big tree. He used the tree to stabilize the car and prevent it from sliding down the hill. Boulders and sand were still rolling down. Yixinga took out her phone to call the police. Before the phone could be pulled out, a large rock fell on the car. The car hit a tree and slid down the slope for a long distance. Su Qingsang's phone flew out. Before she could pick it up, the car slid down a lot more. A few nurses in the car were already shouting. Steady yourself. Calm down. Director Li had never encountered such a situation before. He wanted them to calm down. But the car began to slide again. Su Qingsang gripped the handle of the front seat tightly. His heart sank as he watched the car slide down the slope. Another boulder fell and the car they were in followed the car behind it, sliding further down the hill. There were even signs of the car overturning. This time even Su Qingsang couldn't stay calm. Looking at the phone that she had thrown, she tried to pick it up. At this moment the car completely rushed down the hill. At the headquarters of Tianyu Group in Rong City. Sitting in the conference room, Hu Jinyao glanced at Hui Yifan and Hui Yang, who were sitting below, and picked up the document in front of him. Chapter 161. Hui Yifan and Hui Yang both worked in Tianyu. One was the manager of the sales department, and the other was the manager of the marketing department. President Hua, I don't think you can blame me for this. Hui Yifan was very clear about his work and personal interests in the company. He usually called Hu Jinyao. What do you mean? Nothing. Hui Yifan chuckled. Everyone in Rong City knows that President Hua is very capable. You've almost finished negotiating this kind of case before. If I continue to talk, won't I be stealing your credit? Hu Jinyao stared at Hui Yifan's face and felt that his smile was asking for a beating. President Hua, don't be angry. Don't you think so? As your younger brother, I can't possibly steal your credit, can I? So you can deliberately not do anything and let this project that could have already started be in a state of stagnation until now. Hu Jinyao's voice was slightly cold, and he casually knocked on the table with his hand. But that was a precursor to his wrath. How could that be? Aren't you back now? You can continue. Besides, I've already asked the chairman. The current chairman of Tianyu Group was Hua Mingguang, Hu Jinyao's father. You're using the chairman to pressure me? I wouldn't dare. I'm just stating the truth. Hu Yifan kept smiling. Hu Jinyao nodded and said, Good, very good. Since manager Hua felt that this kind of thing needed to be consulted. I think you don't want to stay in this position anymore. Why don't you leave the business department and go to the logistics department? Hu Jinyao. Hu Yifan stood up. What do you mean? Nothing. Hu Jinyao ignored the change in his expression. This company belongs to those who are capable. If the company can't operate normally after I leave for a few days, then what do I need you for? The atmosphere in the conference room had been very gloomy. Hu Jingyao ignored him and stood up. I will personally go to the Lin Corporation today to negotiate the contract. But this is the last time. I hope that when I'm not around you can display your strengths and do your own things well, instead of using such an evasive attitude to deal with me. Hui Yifan glared at Hu Jingyao, his eyes dark. Hu Jingyao glanced around the meeting room. As for how to deal with Manager Hua, effective immediately. Hui Yifan took half a step forward and was about to argue with Hu Jingyao. Hu Yang held his hand from behind and shook his head gently at him. Hui Yifan stopped and looked at Hu Jingyao's back with a gloomy look. On the other side, Su Qingsang's car kept going down and was hit by the car behind it twice. Su Qingsang's head accidentally hit the seat in front of her when she was falling. She lost consciousness for a while. When she woke up, she found that their car was stuck halfway up the mountain. A few big trees were caught. Her body was held in place by the seatbelt. Her head was dizzy and painful. She tried her best to raise her head to look at the situation and environment in front of her. Only then did she realize that she was not the only one who was awake. The other members of the medical team were also awake, but no one dared to move. The driver's body was hanging from the driver's seat, and his head had hit the glass in front of him. His face was covered in blood, and he had already fainted. Director Li, Deputy Director Chen, and a few nurses were awake, but they did not dare to move. That was because the car was supported by those trees. The car was leaning at a 40-degree angle. Chapter 162. Qingsang? You're awake? Chen Xiaoyu was relieved to see that Su Qingsang was awake. Are you okay? Su Qingsang shook her head gently. Director Chen, are you okay? I'm fine. Deputy Director Chen looked at the environment in front of him and sighed in his heart. What should we do? We can't move at all. It's okay if we can't move, but I'm afraid that the bus will rush down. They were stuck by the trees now, but what if the trees couldn't bear it? Su Qingsang's words made everyone silent. Everyone thought of this terrible possibility. Where's your phone? Who still has your phone? Call. Su Qingsang's phone had already fallen in the front seat. She couldn't take it out at all. It's useless. There's no signal. Deputy Director Li's phone was in his pocket. He took it out and looked a little dispirited. I've called several times. Maybe it's because of the heavy rain and thunder. Deputy Director Chen smiled bitterly. Now we can only wait for someone to pass by and save us. Wait for someone to pass by? Su Qingsang looked at the environment in front of her and couldn't be optimistic at all. Not to mention the fact that they were in the middle of nowhere. Even if someone passed by, she didn't know how long it would take for them to arrive with such a big mudslide. She tried to move her body. It was very uncomfortable to be half-hanging like this. The seat belt was uncomfortable, but without it, her whole body would fall to the front seat. She looked out of the window again. The bus was closed. Only the windows at the front and the back could be opened. The other unconscious people in the bus woke up one after another. Fortunately, the people in the bus were all doctors. Everyone was wearing seat belts, so they were only slightly injured. But they couldn't just hang like this. We should find a way to climb out, someone suggested. We can climb out. But it's raining heavily outside. More importantly, what if we move too much and cause the bus to continue to rush down? Were there still trees at the foot of the hill stuck to them? More importantly, it was raining heavily outside. Unless there's a big crane to fix the bus and then we climb out one by one. It would be great if there was a big crane at this time. Everyone thought so. But how was that possible? Those who have cell phones, try your best to make calls and ask for help. Most people's phones were placed beside them. Everyone took out their phones to make calls, but there was no signal without exception. Are we going to die here today? The young nurse Huang Jia looked scared. She didn't want to die. Don't talk nonsense. Su Qingsang had been looking out the window. She turned to look at her and said, "We'll be fine." How could he be fine? It's dangerous just looking at it. Yes. Huang Jia sounded like she was about to cry. I don't want to die. I'm not married yet. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment, thinking about Hu Jinyao. What would he do if he knew that something had happened to him? She didn't know and couldn't guess. But at this moment she really hoped that Hu Jinyao could be like a hero in a movie. He had suddenly descended from the sky to save her. She knew it was impossible. The accident happened in the morning. Su Qingsang wasn't sure if she was hallucinating when it happened in the afternoon. Chapter 163. She carefully tilted her body and looked up. She could vaguely see an excavator working behind the trees. How was that possible? Not only her but everyone else in the car also became excited. However, no one dared to move. They were afraid that the car would fall or something. The sound of the machine behind them grew louder and louder. When the rescuers' faces appeared outside the car window, Su Qingsang's heart was at ease. Huang Jie, who was behind her, cried tears of joy. No one dared to move, waiting for the rescuers to rescue them. Soon, the rescuers broke the window and began to pull people out one by one. The first person to be rescued was the driver. He didn't wake up. Obviously, he was injured. After he went out, Director Li, Deputy Director Qin, and Huang Jie were all rescued. Su Qingsang wasn't the last. When she went out, the paramedics were resuscitating the driver. He had a head injury, but fortunately it wasn't fatal. Su Qingsang was about to help when she was pulled back. "Are you okay?" The familiar voice stunned her. She turned around and was shocked to see Qiu Yanba's enlarged face. "Why are you here?" She even forgot how to address him. She just stared at him blankly. "Are you okay?" Qiu Yanba didn't answer her question. Instead, he looked her up and down. Su Qingsang had bumped into the front seat. There was a bump on her forehead, but it wasn't bleeding. "Are you hurt?" Qiu Yanbo reached out to touch her forehead. Su Qingsang instinctively avoided it, but she was a little weak because she had been hanging in the seat for too long. Qiu Yanba's hand still touched her forehead. She snorted. He took out a bottle of water from behind him. "Drink some water first. The food is in the car. The car can't stop here, so you have to walk." Su Qingsang was very thirsty. She reached out to take the bottle of water and drank a few mouthfuls. Her throat felt much better. "Thank you." "You're welcome." She looked so disheveled. Her hair was messy, her face pale, and there was sweat on her forehead. Qiu Yanba couldn't help but raise his hand to wipe her sweat. Su Qingsang was once again startled by the sudden approach. She dodged backward again, and at the same time she avoided his hand. This was a place where a large landslide had occurred. Her heel was a rock. Su Qingsang lost her balance and almost fell. Qiu Yanba was quick to catch her. "Be careful." He put his hand on her shoulder. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable. The situation in front of her was so weird. "I can stand on my own. Can you let me go first?" "Okay," Qiu Yanba said, but he showed no signs of letting go. He supported her body to the side. "Stand here. The terrain here is flatter." Su Qingsang really wanted to avoid his hand on her body, but the road in front of her was really not smooth. Then, because she wanted to avoid him, she tried to lie down on the rocks several times. Not only did she not walk steadily, but she almost fell down several times. If Qiu Yanba hadn't steadied her, she would have easily fallen. "Thank you." Su Qingsang was not an ungrateful person. He thought for a moment and tried to find something to talk about. "Why are you here? What do you think?" How did Su Qingsang know? She wasn't Su Peixian. Moreover, she didn't even know what kind of business the Qiu family had. Chapter 164. Qiu Yanba smiled. He helped Su Qingsang to a tree at the back, where they stood on a relatively balanced spot. "What kind of business do you think there is in this small Qingyuan county that I can negotiate with?" Su Qingsang didn't know how to respond to this question. "Then you?" Qiu Yanba stood in front of her. He didn't seem to be uncomfortable with the chaotic and noisy environment around him. "If I say that I'm here to look for you, do you believe me?" Su Qingsang widened her eyes and looked at him. When their eyes met, she twitched the corner of her mouth and said, "Brother-in-law, this joke is not funny." "It's a joke." Qiu Yanba lowered his head and looked at Su Qingsang's face. "Also, don't call me brother-in-law. I'm not married to your sister yet. In my heart, you are my brother-in-law." Su Qingsang took a step back as she spoke. Behind her was the trunk of the big tree, and she had nowhere to retreat. Qiu Yanba took a step forward. "But I suddenly realized that I don't want to treat you as my little girl anymore. What should I do?" "Qiu Yanba." Su Qingsang's face was cold. She couldn't accept Qiu Yanba's attitude at all. "I'm already married and you're going to marry my sister soon. I hope you can respect yourself." Her voice wasn't loud. She had been hanging there for a long time, so she was still a little weak. Qiu Yanba stared at the obvious rejection in her clear eyes. His mind, however, was replaying the scene of her talking to Huo Jinyao on the phone. He really wanted Su Qingsang to have the same look in her eyes because of him. "Qingsang, did you know? The Qiu family and the Su family had previously arranged an engagement. But it didn't say that it had to be your sister. If you are willing, I don't mind changing the bride." Was this person crazy? Su Qingsang stopped talking. He looked around and saw that most of the injured people had been rescued. The injured were tending to each other's wounds. Su Qingsang had no intention of talking to Qiu Yanba. Sorry you don't mind, but I do. I'm still in the countryside and I still have work to do. She stopped talking to Qiu Yanba and turned to help. Qiu Yanba was left looking at her back, his eyes full of determination. It only took Hu Jinyao one afternoon to sign the contract that Hu Yifan had been delaying. This was something that had been decided long ago. It made no difference whether he was here or not. However, Hu Yifan had kicked the ball back to him. What if he didn't return to Rong City? What did Hu Yifan want to do? Hu Jinyao refused to have dinner with the CEO of Lin's company and left after signing the contract with him. As soon as they left the company, Yang Wenchang, who had been following him, finally spoke. President Hua. Yes. Something happened in Qingyuan County. What does the incident in Qingyuan County have to do with him? Hu Jinyao didn't understand what Yang Wenchang was trying to say, but only for a few seconds. He suddenly stopped and looked at Yang Wenchang. What did you say? I said something happened in Qingyuan County. It was a landslide. Because of the heavy rain, there was a large landslide. Then, speak. Hu Jinyao's expression was already quite cold. I tried to contact Miss Su, but I couldn't reach her. Hu Jinyao's face darkened, but Yang Wenchang had no choice but to finish the job. Except for Miss Su, we can't get in touch with the rest of the medical team with her. Chapter 165. Hu Jinyao's eyes were dangerous. Yang Wenchang's face dropped. 3 hours ago. As soon as Yang Wenchang finished speaking, Hu Jinyao's face became even colder. 3 hours ago, and you're telling me now? When I received the news you were signing a contract with Boss Lin. During this period of time, Hu Jinyao shifted his focus to Lin City. Those who knew said that he was going to explore a new market, and those who didn't know said that he was avoiding responsibility. Especially since the Hua family still had 2 young masters who were eyeing him covetously. He really didn't want Hu Jinyao to make any more mistakes. Even so, Yang Wenchang's voice still lowered. Hu Jinyao's eyes were cold, and his tone was even colder. Help me book the fastest ticket. As for your punishment, you'd better pray that Qingsang is fine or else. There was no need to say anything else. Yang Wenchang quickly said, the ticket is booked. We can go to the airport now. Hu Jinyao's face became a little clearer, and he strode to the parking place. Although Su Qingsang wasn't seriously injured, almost all of the medical staff who came this time had wounds of different sizes after going through the torment just now. Although it wasn't fatal, almost everyone was injured. After Deputy Director Li of the medical team called the relevant leaders, they decided not to go to Gaoye Town. Just as a group of people followed the rescue team back to the center of Qingyuan County, a village in front of them was buried because of a large-scale landslide. The rescue team was now going to rescue as soon as possible. There was only a health center in this place. Seeing this situation, the doctors and nurses of the medical team didn't say that they were going to rest and helped. Although Su Qingsang studied obstetrics and gynecology as a doctor, every doctor had to know how to bandage and suture wounds. She couldn't care less about Qiu Yanba. In the simple tent set up by the rescue team, she started to busy herself with the other doctors. Qiu Yanba was ignored. However, he didn't feel uncomfortable. Instead, he followed behind and helped with great interest. At first, Su Qingsang wanted to drive him away, but then she realized that he could really help, so she didn't say anything. At this time, no matter who he was, she just needed to catch him and use him. The relevant departments also acted very quickly. At night, more than 50 buried villagers had been rescued, and they were rescuing the other half overnight. Su Qingsang was so busy that she didn't even have time to drink water, let alone eat. Qiu Yanba came up to her after she stitched up a patient's wound and handed her a bottle of water and a piece of bread. Eat something first. Even if you want to save someone, you have to conserve your strength first. Thank you. Su Qingsang was really hungry, so she didn't stand on ceremony. He took the water and gulped down a few mouthfuls. Be careful. Seeing that she almost choked, Qiu Yanba reached out and patted her on the back. Su Qingsang stiffened. She took a step back and glared at Qiu Yanba. Thank you, but I'm fine. Qiu Yanba tilted his head and looked at her. His expression was a little playful. Are you going to throw me away after using me? Whatever you say. Su Qingsang's voice was slightly cold. As a married woman, and you are my brother-in-law, it's better for us to keep our distance. Why didn't you tell me to keep my distance when I saved you? Su Qingsang frowned and looked at him with confusion. Chapter 166. Qiu Yanba spread his hands. Why do you think the rescue came so quickly in Gaoye Town? Because I was on my way to find you. I heard something happened, so I transferred people here as soon as possible. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. Although they had been in trouble for a long time, the people here came quickly. You can also watch the news now. There are several nearby towns that have experienced disasters of different degrees. They are not so lucky. Thank you. Su Qingsang nodded. This sentence was much more sincere than before. But I still say the same thing. You eat first. Qiu Yanba glanced at the rain outside the tent. I don't think the rain will stop for a while. The rescue work is difficult. There may be other injured people sent here later. You doctors on the front line should save some strength. Su Qingsang didn't say anything and finished the water and bread in her hands. She glanced at Qiu Yanba and turned to continue with her work. It's not cute at all. Qiu Yanba raised his eyebrows and muttered to himself. He touched his chin. But it's quite interesting. Another hour passed and the rescue workers rescued another 8 villagers. One of them was a pregnant woman who was 8 months pregnant. She had stopped breathing when she came out. The situation was very critical. The pregnant woman's husband was working outside and survived. Seeing this situation, he almost knelt down to the medical team doctors. Su Qingsang was not in the mood to talk to him. She followed Chief Chen and the nurses into the tent. The husband wanted to follow in but was stopped by Qiu Yanba. Sir, if you go in, it will affect the medical staff. You'd better wait outside. Su Qingsang happened to hear this when she pulled up the tent. She couldn't help but look at Qiu Yanba again. The husband finally stopped saying he wanted to go in. The rain outside slowly let up. Qiu Yanba looked into the tent. There was no movement, so they could only wait. There was a doctor on the other side who needed a stretcher. Because Qiu Yanba had been helping, the doctor called out. Qiu Yanba didn't refuse and went over to help. After carrying the stretcher, he looked at the time. Su Qingsang had been in there for an hour. He took a bottle of water and 2 more pieces of bread, intending to give them to Su Qingsang when she came out. From the corner of his eye, he saw a person who shouldn't be here. Jinyao? When he saw Hua Jinyao also saw him. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes slightly. At that moment, his gaze became extremely sharp. Boschou? President Hua. They already knew his identity. Qiu Yanba didn't stand on ceremony. Hua Jinyao had barely stopped for the past few hours. He rushed all the way from Rong City to Lin City. After he got off the plane, he immediately rushed to Qingyuan County. As soon as he arrived at the center of the county, he received the most accurate news. It was said that Su Qingsang's medical team had encountered mudslides and landslides, and their survival was uncertain. Hua Jinyao's heart was in his throat. He couldn't contact Su Qingsang and didn't know how she was doing. He used all the forces he could use in the shortest time possible and finally got accurate information about Su Qingsang. Chapter 167. Hua Jinyao looked Qiu Yanba up and down. His eyes were deep and unreadable. However, it only took him a few seconds to turn around and continue looking for Qingsang. When they arrived, they had already heard that the medical team was fine, so they were participating in the rescue. He had only turned halfway when Qiu Yanba spoke as if he knew what he was going to do. Qingsang is having surgery inside. I don't think he'll come out so soon. He pouted and pointed at one of the tents. Hua Jinyao paused and turned around to look at Qiu Yanba. Their eyes met and there seemed to be some tension in the air. Hua Jinyao wasn't in a hurry to find Su Qingsang. He took a step forward and stood in front of Qiu Yanba. Boss Chou, can I ask why you are here? What do you think? Qiu Yanba didn't answer his question directly. His half-smile was full of mischief. I'm not familiar with Boss Chou, so naturally I wouldn't know. But I think the Li family and the Su family might know better, don't you think? Qiu Yanba chuckled, his expression calm. Mr. Dai, you don't have to bring up the Su family and the Li family. Although the Chou family doesn't dare to say that they can cover the sky with one hand, no one can stop me if I want to do something. I admire President Chow's confidence. However, I also want to give you a piece of advice. What? Hua Jinyao casually put his hands into his trouser pockets, and his handsome face was a bit cold. Living in this world, one must know one's own limits and know where one's abilities lie. Secondly, one should know how to be content with what they have. Those who covet things that don't belong to them usually don't end up well. What do you think? Thank you for the reminder, President Hua. However, I'm a rebellious person by nature. I like to make things that don't belong to me mine. Only then would the process be interesting. What do you think? Hua Jinyao's face darkened. He was trying his best to restrain the urge to punch Qiu Yanba. Wah wah, the baby's cry came from inside. The husband was about to rush in when a nurse came out. Li Xiuli's family, mother and son are safe. She has some external injuries and needs to rest in bed. Thank you, doctor, thank you, doctor. When Su Qingsang and Director Chen came out of the tent, both of them were covered in sweat. None of them expected that she would encounter such a dangerous situation on this trip. Rubbing her brows, she was about to grab a bottle of water when 2 bottles of water appeared in front of her. Qiu Yanba placed the water and bread in front of Su Qingsang. The other bottle of water was naturally handed over by Hu Jinyao. When Su Qingsang saw Hu Jinyao, she was so shocked that she even forgot to take the bottle of water. What's wrong? Are you stupid? Hu Jinyao put the water in her hand with a faint smile in his eyes. Seeing him suddenly appear, Su Qingsang didn't take the bottle from his hand. She just stared at him blankly, unable to come back to her senses for a long while. Jinyao. She looked at the bottle of water and then at him. Was he real? Yes. Hu Jinyao nodded. Looking at her dumbfounded expression, he wanted to laugh. Seeing that she didn't move, he couldn't help but reach out and pull Su Qingsang into his arms. It was already past the Mid-Autumn Festival. Even though Lin City was a southern city, it was still a little chilly. Hu Jinyao had been worried about Su Qingsang all the way here, so he didn't even open an umbrella. His clothes were already wet and his body was full of water vapor. Su Qingsang was held by him, but she didn't feel the coldness of his body at all. Chapter 168. She didn't know when it started to rain again, but it was just a drizzle. Hu Jinyao hugged Su Qingsang very tightly. His lips were right next to her cheek. He turned his face and kissed her cheek a few times. His lips were also cold. Su Qingsang shrunk her neck. It seemed that she only realized what she had done at that moment. She gently pushed Hu Jinyao to let go of her. Hu Jinyao let go of her but didn't let go of her. You scared me today. Su Qingsang was also shocked, not to mention him. The moment she was hung on the car, she really thought that she was going to die. Why are you here? Su Qingsang didn't tell him that she was scared at that moment. She was actually more curious about why he was here. I was worried about you. So I came. Hu Jinyao looked at her with clear eyes. Under the not very bright lights, she could see that his eyes were filled with her shadow. Su Qingsang's heart was like a feather gently brushing against the lake of her heart when she was being looked at like that. Her heart, which had always been calm and indifferent, could no longer be calm at that moment. The atmosphere between the two of them was really too beautiful. Even in such an environment, it couldn't be ignored. Ahem. Qingsang, eat something first. You should be hungry again. Qiu Yanba's voice interrupted Su Qingsang's thoughts. Only then did she realize where she was and what kind of environment she was in. She blushed and took a step back uncomfortably. She didn't take the bread and water from Qiu Yanba's hand. Instead, she took the water from Hu Jinyao's hand. Have you been here for a long time? According to the time, Qiu Yanba had appeared early. However, as soon as Hu Jinyao heard that something had happened to her, he immediately rushed over. Not long. Hu Jinyao looked behind him. Yang Wenchang had finally arrived. He had arrived a long time ago. However, since Hu Jinyao was here, he naturally had a reason. In the name of disaster relief, he had delivered all kinds of necessities for the people. Yang Wenchang had just gone to arrange the whereabouts of these items. Now that he finally had the time to come, he was carrying large and small bags of food in his hands. Hua. When she met Hu Jinyao's eyes, she swallowed the word president. Dr. Su. Yang Wenchang looked directly at Su Qingsang and handed the bag in his hand to her. This is some food. You and the other doctors and nurses in the medical team have worked hard. Not at all. Su Qingsang shook her head. It's what we should do. She looked at the bag in Yang Wenchang's hand and was stunned by the label on it. Why are there so many? She looked at Hu Jinyao and asked, Did you prepare this? That's right. Yang Wenchang glanced at Hu Jinyao and said, Hua. Jinyao is an excellent employee of our company. This time he was the one who applied for the company to send a lot of supplies in the name of the earthquake. So don't feel burdened. The corners of Qiu Yanba's mouth curled up. He looked at Hu Jinyao with a mocking smile. Of course Hu Jinyao saw his expression. He turned to hold Su Qingsang's hand and said, Don't worry about this. Someone will take care of it. You, on the other hand, have a tiring day. You should eat something and rest. Yes. Su Qingsang was tired, but she wouldn't force herself at this time. Only by conserving her strength could she better participate in the work. Holding the bag that Yang Wenchang had given her, she turned around to look for the other medical staff and distributed the food and drinks to them. Qiu Yanba watched Su Qingsang's figure walk away. He retracted his gaze and looked at Hu Jinyao. Chapter 169. Qiu Yanba's expression was unreadable. Hua Jinyao's expression was slightly cold. What does President Qiu mean? Nothing. Qiu Yanba smiled. I just thought it was strange. I don't know who said it, but the first element of marriage is sincerity. President Hua, am I right? Hua Jinyao didn't take this threat seriously. So, I mean to say that a marriage which begins with deceit has no sincerity, and probably no loyalty. He really did not know how long such a marriage could last. What do you think? Don't worry, Boss Zhou. Hua Jinyao's expression didn't change, but his tone was a little cold. It doesn't matter how you started it. What matters is how you maintain it and what kind of results you get. When it came to time, there was really no need for Boss Zhou to worry. I believe it will last as long as I live. Is that so? President Hua sure is confident. Qiu Yanba smiled and raised the bottle of water in his hand. In that case, I can only wish you all the best, President Hua. Hua Jinyao glanced at Qiu Yanba coldly and turned to look for Su Qingsang. The rescue continued, and the medical team arranged for people to take turns on duty. Those who were not injured would keep watch for the first half of the night, while those who were injured would keep watch for the second half. Su Qingsang didn't think that the wound on her forehead was a wound. He directly requested to keep watch until midnight. By the time Hua Jinyao arrived, everything had been arranged. Aren't you tired? Do you want to rest for a while? Hua Jinyao had never been in such a situation before. Everything in front of him was quite unfamiliar to him. More than a dozen villagers were buried under the ruins of the village. Batch after batch of rescue team members went up to the rescue. Su Qingsang looked at the other side and shook her head gently. It's okay. I'll rest later. Can you drink coffee? Hua Jinyao looked at her, holding a cup of freshly brewed instant coffee in his hand. I just rushed it. This is the only one I have now. But I'm afraid you won't be able to sleep after drinking it. I'm fine. Su Qingsang took the cup of coffee and took a sip. The warm coffee warmed her stomach. She turned to Hua Jinyao and said, I'm fine now. You can go back tomorrow morning if you have nothing to do. I still have work to do. Don't worry. I'm here for disaster relief. My boss won't blame me. Really? Of course it's true. Honey, you don't believe me? Hua Jinyao moved his face closer to hers as he spoke, looking a little aggrieved. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it and moved to the side. Stop it. There were so many people around. Why didn't they look at where they were? I'm not joking. Hua Jinyao put his arm around Su Qingsang's waist and said, Do the math yourself, honey. How many days have I not seen you? It hasn't been that long, right? 10 days. Hua Jinyao looked at her. We haven't seen each other for 10 days. Honey, don't you miss me? Stop it. Su Qingsang looked around and said in a low voice, Let go of me. It's not good to be seen. So what if I saw it? You're my wife. Not only did Hua Jinyao not let go, but he also hugged her even tighter. We are a couple. What's wrong with a hug? Don't even mention hugging even if we do it now. Hua Jinyao's mouth was covered by Su Qingsang. She glared at him and said, Hua Jinyao, that's enough. Just look at what he's saying. Not enough. Hua Jinyao still had a lot of sweet words to say. Qingsang. Chapter 170. He turned around and glared at the person in front of him. The expression on his face could not be considered pleasant. Su Qingsang took the opportunity to move away from his arms and took a big step back. Qiu Yanba turned to look at Su Qingsang as if he didn't see Hua Jinyao's sullen face. Qingsang, I just wanted to tell you that there are more injured people being sent over. Su Qingsang looked in the direction he was pointing. She nodded and turned to look at Hua Jinyao. I'm going to work. Find a place to rest. It's getting late. I'm fine. If you won't sleep, then I won't sleep either. Hua Jinyao's sweet words seemed to be at his fingertips. Su Qingsang rubbed her forehead, feeling a little embarrassed. These words could be said in private, but there were outsiders here. Seriously, Su Qingsang glanced at Hua Jinyao and quickly went to work. After midnight, the doctors and nurses who were in charge of the handover woke up. Su Qingsang finally had time to rest for a while. The medical team had a special tent to rest in, with many people sharing one tent. Hua Jinyao had been waiting for Su Qingsang. When she was done, he pulled her into the tent that he and his men had set up. You can sleep here for a while. There's no need. Don't make it special. How is this special treatment? Hua Jinyao held her hand. This place is so small. I feel like you're wronged. Hua Jinyao. That's enough, my wife. Don't argue with me about these small things. You'd better get some rest. I guess I'll be busy tomorrow. All right. Su Qingsang thought about it and agreed, so she stopped arguing. The place was limited and the environment was simple. She simply washed up and went to bed. When he entered the tent, he found that Su Qingsang had already fallen asleep. She had been busy just now and there were many people around her, so Hu Jinyao hadn't been able to take a good look at her. Now that he was free, he took out the ointment he had prepared earlier and sat down beside Su Qingsang. He had noticed that Su Qingsang's forehead was a little swollen. He didn't know how he got hurt. He used the emergency light to apply the ointment on Su Qingsang's wound. His movements weren't big, but Su Qingsang only moved a little. She was in a deep sleep. She was probably exhausted. After applying the medicine, Hu Jinyao stared at her face for a while. Finally he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Only then did he lie down beside her and rest together with her. Su Qingsang woke up before dawn the next day. Actually, no one could really sleep well that night. The whole night was filled with the sound of excavators and all sorts of noises. As soon as she woke up, Hu Jinyao, who was outside, heard the noise and poked his head in. "Why don't you sleep a little longer?" It was too late when he came yesterday, so he only saw it clearly when the sun rose. The faint shadows in Su Qingsang's eyes suggested that she hadn't had a good rest. Hu Jinyao's heart ached. He even had the urge to light his cigarette and take Su Qingsang back to Lin City. "I'm not sleeping anymore." Hearing the noise outside, Su Qingsang quickly sat up, stood up, and stretched her limbs. Su Qingsang walked out of the tent and saw that the people around her were all busy. She casually washed up and headed to the tent where the medical team was located. "Why don't you at least eat something first?" Hu Jinyao held her hand. He handed the breakfast that he had prepared beforehand to her and said, "Eat breakfast first. I won't let you go if you don't eat." Su Qingsang looked at his stubborn eyes and had no other choice but to take it. She ate very quickly without any elegance or gentleness. Chapter 171. Su Qingsang took a few sips of the milk he handed to her, but didn't say anything in the end. After finishing it, she waved her hand and was about to leave. "Honey." Hu Jinyao really lost to her. He took out a tissue and handed it to her. No matter how anxious she was, she didn't need to disregard her image to this extent, right? Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. She had been too anxious. She took the tissue and wiped her face. Without looking at Hu Jinyao, she hurried to treat the wounded. After a few steps, she stopped and turned around to look at Hu Jinyao. "By the way, if there's nothing else, you should leave. It's a mess here. I don't think I'll go back so soon." Hu Jinyao gave Su Qingsang a really sad look. "Honey, isn't it good for me to stay here with you?" Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. "It's not good or bad. It's just inappropriate." "How is it inappropriate?" "It's just not suitable." Su Qingsang waved at him. "Remember. Let's go back as soon as the traffic starts." After Su Qingsang left, Hu Jinyao was still holding the half-empty bottle of milk in his hand. He turned around and saw Qiu Yanba looking at him with his arms crossed. "Tieske, looks like President Hua is also despised. Mr. Qiu, you really have nothing better to do." Hu Jinyao glanced at him coldly. "But you think too much. That's because Qingsang loves me. I know very well whether or not I feel sorry for you." Qiu Yanba moved closer to Hu Jinyao. "I'm curious how Qingsang would feel if she found out that her husband lied to her." "I'm curious too. If the Li family and the Su family knew what you're thinking right now, how would they feel?" "President Hua, you're worrying too much. Back then, the Chou family had an engagement with the Su family, but it wasn't specified who would be the executor of the engagement. Speaking of which, Qingsang's surname is also Su." Hu Jinyao didn't look too good. "Let me remind you, Mr. Chou. Qingsang was already married. She's my wife now." "I know." Qiu Yanba nodded. "But what about marriage? This marriage could still be divorced. What's more, I'm afraid Qingsang doesn't know that her marriage is a sham." "Boss Chou, be careful with your words. It's better not to talk nonsense without solid evidence." "Is there no evidence?" Qiu Yanba lowered his voice. "The young master of the Hua family in Rong City is engaged to the Su family. Everyone in Rong City knows about this." Looking at Hu Jinyao's unchanging expression, he was impressed that Hu Jinyao could still be so calm at a time like this. "But I'm also really curious. The dignified young master of the Hua family, the president of the Chanyu group, had actually come to Lin City, thousands of miles away from Rong City, to marry an illegitimate daughter who had been detested by her family. I'm really curious about the reason behind this. I wonder if President Hua would be willing to answer my questions." Hu Jinyao's expression slowly became serious. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Qiu Yanba in front of him. Qiu Yanba generously let him see. Seeing that he didn't speak, he added, I'm here because I can be honest with my heart. I just don't know if President He can do it. He Jinyao's expression didn't change. Yes or no, I don't need to explain to Mr. Chiu. Excuse me. He turned around and left. Yang Wenchang had also woken up and seemed to be looking for him. Chapter 172. It wasn't the first time Su Qingsang had faced death, but this was the most tragic one. The rescue team brought over the buried family of 3. When they arrived, all of them had no signs of life. The entire medical team didn't make a sound. They just looked at the family of 3. The youngest child looked like he was only 4 or 5 years old. Deputy Director Chen was the first to react. He picked up the white cloth and covered the child. Su Qingsang covered the other person with the white cloth. She knew that this was inevitable, but facing such a tragic scene still made her feel like acting. When He Jinyao found her at noon, he immediately noticed that she wasn't in a good mood. Honey, are you too tired? Su Qingsang shook her head and glanced at He Jinyao. Eat. He Jinyao came over with instant noodles in his hand. It's ready? The conditions here are limited. You can eat first. As he spoke, he put the instant noodles on the simple table beside him. It's rare that it's not raining anymore. It'll be easier for the rescue work to start. You should eat something or you'll be out of energy in the afternoon. It rained all night last night and didn't stop until this morning. He Jinyao. Su Qingsang suddenly reached out and hugged him. He Jinyao was stunned. It was rare for Su Qingsang to take the initiative. He should have enjoyed it, but it was obviously not the right time. What's wrong? What happened? He Jinyao reached out and wrapped his arms around her waist. His voice was so gentle that he didn't even realize it. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. Disasters had always been like this. When it came, no one would be spared. He Jinyao didn't know why he was like this, so he could only guess. Are you too tired? Su Qingsang shook her head. She didn't want to talk at this time. Then, He Jinyao looked into the distance. The medical team was actually some distance away from the landslide. This was just the first aid point. After the injured were treated, they would be immediately transferred to the county hospital. There were still people searching for them. The longer time passed, the lower the survival rate. How could he forget this? Honey. He Jinyao hugged Su Qingsang's waist tightly and said in a very soft voice, birth, aging, illness and death, natural disasters, these are all unavoidable. You don't want it either. Don't blame yourself. How could Su Qingsang not know that? But he could only watch helplessly as his life was taken away in front of him. Even if he was a doctor, he still made her feel uncomfortable. All right. He Jinyao patted her on the back. Honey, hurry up and eat something. Think about it this way. You have to take care of yourself first. Only then can you save more people and help more people. Don't you agree? As he spoke, He Jinyao took a step back. He reached out and stroked her cheek. I believe that you will definitely save more people, right? His eyes were deep and firm. Su Qingsang looked at him. Even though the gloom in her heart hadn't dissipated, she felt much better. His words and his embrace were like a hot spring, nourishing her heart bit by bit. Whether it was the incident with Zhang Mei last time or this time, Su Qingsang was extremely glad that He Jinyao had always been there for her. He Jinyao. Su Qingsang looked at him and met his eyes. Thank you. She had never believed in love, nor was she willing to believe in men. Chapter 173. The rescue work lasted for 3 days. Except for a few missing villagers, the casualties had been confirmed. Su Qingsang and the medical team she was in had been working around the clock. As long as they were still breathing, they would be able to save their lives. Some of them were beyond their abilities. He Jinyao stayed with her for 3 days. She performed the surgery and helped to deal with the patients. He became a volunteer and kept himself busy. Besides him, there was Chiu Yanba. He had also been very busy and had done a lot of things with them. 3 days later, the rescue work came to an end. The doctors in Qingyuan County took over. Su Qingsang and the others finally received instructions from the higher-ups to return to Lin City. Su Qingsang came in the medical team's car, but she got in He Jinyao's car to go back. During this period of time, she had not slept well at all. As soon as she got in the car, He Jinyao adjusted the seat for her. It'll take more than 2 hours to get back to Lin City. You should sleep. What about you? Aren't you sleepy? I'm not sleepy. He Jinyao found a blanket, opened it and covered her with it. Go to sleep. Su Qingsang glanced at him and didn't refuse. She yawned, laid her body flat and fell asleep. When she woke up, she found that she was already home in Lin City. She slept so soundly that she didn't even know how she got into the house. She looked around awkwardly but didn't see Hu Jinyao. When she came out of the room she didn't see him. Sister Lu, the part-time helper, had arrived and was cooking in the kitchen. Sister Lu, have you seen Hu Jinyao? He seems to be in the study. Sister Lu didn't stop working. He told me to call him after dinner. It's almost time for dinner. Su Qingsang nodded and followed her into the study. Hu Jinyao seemed to be busy. He sat behind the desk with a laptop open in front of him and a pile of documents beside him. He stared at the screen sideways, not noticing that she had come in. Yes, do as I say. By the way, change the price on the tender. I'm not satisfied with what they did before. And the last time? He saw Su Qingsang enter the door from the corner of his eye. He whispered into the phone that he would talk to her later and hung up. You're awake? Yes. Su Qingsang took a few steps forward and looked at the documents on the table. There were so many words and all kinds of reports. She felt dizzy just by looking at them. Are you busy? I'm fine. Did your trip to Qingyuan County delay a lot of work? It was rare for Su Qingsang to feel a little guilty. What are you thinking? Nothing. Of course, Hu Jinyao wouldn't tell her that he had left behind a lot of things in Rong City to attend to, nor would he tell her that there were indeed a lot of things to do in the company. He reached out to hold Su Qingsang's hand and looked at her face. After sleeping for the whole journey, she looked much better than when she had left Qingyuan. They had been raised well. Go to bed early tonight and recover your energy. Su Qingsang didn't refute. Just as she was about to say that Hu Jinyao also needed a good rest, her phone rang. Ping Su lines. Sister, are you okay? Su Yusin had heard that something had happened to Qingyuan, but he only found out later that Su Qingsang was also there. When he found out, he was shocked and called Su Qingsang immediately. Chapter 174. Are you sure? Yes, I'm back. That's good. Su Yusin breathed a sigh of relief. He thought of something else and suddenly didn't know if he should tell Su Qingsang. What's wrong? Is there anything else? It's Qiu Yanba. Su Yusin's face darkened when he said the name, and his voice became colder. He wants to break off the engagement with my sister. What did you say? Su Qingsang was shocked. When did this happen? Yesterday. Last night, Qiu Yanba came to their door in a very solemn manner and gave them generous gifts, begging for their forgiveness. The Su family was confused, but Qiu Yanba said that he wanted to break off the engagement with Su Peijian. Everyone in the Su family was shocked. Su Peijian in particular could not accept this reality at all. What did I do wrong? How have I wronged you? You want to break off the engagement? You're fine. You didn't do anything wrong. However, I suddenly realized that what I feel for you is not love, so I want to break off the engagement. Of course, Su Peijian wouldn't accept this excuse. We've been engaged for a long time. Why didn't you say that you didn't love me? Now that we've been engaged for 2 or 3 years, you're saying it's not love? Qiu Yanba, how could there be such a thing? I'm sorry. Qiu Yanba's attitude was firm. I was wrong before. I thought I could make do with being with Peijian like this. But I realized I couldn't do it. How powerful was Su Peijian? Hearing Qiu Yanba's words, how could she swallow her pride? Don't make up excuses. Why don't you tell me directly if you have other women outside? I really didn't. Qiu Yanba's expression was honest. If that's what you think, there's nothing I can do. I really just don't want to make do. Make do? Lu Fei was the eldest daughter of the Su family. How could Qiu Yanba call her a mediocre person? How could Su Peijian tolerate such humiliation? She stood up without hesitation and pointed at Qiu Yanba with a determined expression. So what? Do you think I care about you? Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue hadn't figured out how to solve the problem yet. Su Peijian said, Get out. Get out of my house right now. I don't ever want to see you again. Yesterday happened to be Sunday, and Su Yusin was also at home. He was completely caught off guard by this turn of events. Li Qianxue liked Qiu Yanba very much and so did Su Qinghui. The two elders knew that Su Peijian was stubborn and proud, so they had to put in a good word for her. However, no matter what the two elders said, Qiu Yanba insisted on breaking off the engagement. Not only that, but they also returned the token of engagement between the two families. This could be considered a firm attitude. Su Yusin was a little emotional. He had called Qiu Yanba brother-in-law for the past few years. Who knew that such a change would happen? Su Qingsang was completely dumbfounded. Qiu Yanba had been with them for the past few days, volunteering in Qingyuan County. Later, he said that he had something to do and came to say goodbye to her. Then he returned to Lin City a day earlier. Su Qingsang thought that he had gotten over it after seeing her with Hu Jinyao every day. Who knew that not only did this person not think it through, but he also made such a big move as soon as he came back. Su Qingsang felt a surge of uneasiness in her heart. For so many years she was able to live in harmony with the Su family, maintaining a semblance of peace. It was only because she had no conflict of interest with the Su family. Chapter 175. However, if the Su family and the Li family found out that she caused Qiu Yanba to break off the engagement with Su Peijian, things would get complicated. Even if it had nothing to do with her, she was the cause. Sister? Sister, can you hear me? Sister? I'm fine. Su Qingsang shook her head. She didn't know what she could do. She just hoped that Qiu Yanba wouldn't go crazy. Yes. I'll visit you in a few days when I have time off. Okay. Su Qingsang was still very willing to be close to Su Yusen. However, she said, you comfort your sister when you're free. Let her be more open-minded. She can definitely find a better man with her qualifications. I know. But I don't have time to stay at home every day. I can only ask my mother to persuade her. After hanging up the phone, Su Qingsang found that Hu Jinyao was staring at her. She couldn't hide the expression on her face from him. What happened? Nothing. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say and looked at Hu Jinyao. She really couldn't say that Qiu Yanba broke off the engagement with Su Peijian because of her. First, it would make her seem so important. It would be too narcissistic. Second, no husband would be happy to hear such news. She believed that Hu Jinyao was no exception. You and I are husband and wife. What can we talk about? Hu Jinyao turned off the computer, put away the documents and walked to her. Look at you. You're frowning so hard that you could kill a mosquito. How can you say it's nothing? Qiu Yanba broke off the engagement with Su Peijian. Su Qingsang told him in the end, I don't know if it's because of me. But if it's because of me, I feel. It has nothing to do with you. It's Qiu Yanba's own business. Hu Jinyao interrupted her and didn't let her continue to blame herself. He's not a child anymore. He should also learn to pay for his actions. Since he made up his mind, he must have thought it through. But, if he has feelings for Su Peijian, he can continue with or without you. Su Qingsang knew that what he said was true, but she was still a little worried. I just don't want my father and aunt to. Don't worry. Hu Jinyao held her in his arms. I won't let them bully you. I'm not talking about bullying. Anyway, I don't like it. I don't like it either. Hu Jinyao kissed her on the forehead. You're my wife. That Qiu Yanba is so annoying. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. He's annoying, but I can't deny that he did save me this time. I just hope he did it on impulse. Impulsive? I think he has ulterior motives. Hu Jinyao sneered. He came here just like that and said that he wanted to break off the engagement with Su Peijian. On the surface, it looks like it's for you, but in reality, it's only for himself. Seeing Su Qingsang looking at him with a puzzled look, he added, think about it. He said he likes you and has feelings for you. Then he would break off the engagement with Su Peijian. At that time he could say that he did all of this for her. What will happen to you? You are already married. You can't accept him. His actions are just to make you feel guilty and sad. If you weren't married, his actions would only make things difficult for you. Think about it. Don't you agree? Chapter 176. She laughed bitterly and said self-deprecatingly, I've known since I was a child that the Su family didn't like me. She had nothing to do with me, but she raised me. Of course she wouldn't like me. Even I, Su Chenghui, call him dad, but I know he doesn't see me as his daughter. After all these years, I've gotten over it. I'm just a little confused. If they don't like me, why did they bring me back to the Su family? Send me away. Send me to some orphanage or some poor family. Wouldn't they be happier not to see me? Su Qingsang had been confused for so many years, but no one had come to help her. This time, I'm not concerned about Qiu Yanba. I'm just worried about the Li family and the Su family. They might not bully me, but the Su family raised me. But no matter what, the Su family raised me, and I don't want to have any real conflict or opposition with them. Do you understand? Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang. Her features were gentle and beautiful, and her eyes were clear. He felt something in his heart. He pulled her into his arms again and gently patted her back. My wife is so kind. Don't worry. Qiu Yanba was the one who started all of this. Neither the Su family nor the Li family can blame you for this. He would never give them an excuse to make things difficult for Su Qingsang. She was the person he wanted to protect. Su Qingsang pressed her lips into a straight line and finally nodded. I won't talk about it anymore. Let's go eat. Okay. You have to promise me that you won't think about it anymore. These things really have nothing to do with you. It would be good if it really had nothing to do with her. Su Qingsang shook her head and decided not to think about it for now. Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes. He felt very uncomfortable thinking about Qiu Yanba. Although he had insulted him in front of Su Qingsang, the punishment was too light for him. It seemed that the Qiu family had too much free time recently. That was why Qiu Yanba had so much free time to come to Su Qingsang. It was time for him to find something for Qiu Yanba to do. Su Qingsang rested at home for 2 days before going to work. As soon as she entered the hospital, she was notified. Due to the trauma and outstanding performance of the medical team during the landslide, the medical team that went to Qingyuan County would be commended this Friday. Not only did he receive a commendation, but he also received a month's worth of performance pay. As soon as Su Qingsang sat down, she received a call from Shi Mengwan. What do you think? Are you done? It's about time. What happened? You can do it? I haven't seen you for a few days and you've become a hero. What are you talking about? What do you think I said? Didn't you watch the news for the past 2 days? What news? Su Qingsang hadn't watched the news. She didn't react for a moment when she heard Shi Mengwan's words. Someone posted your photo on the internet. You're famous now. Weibo. Su Qingsang had been so busy that she didn't have time to check Weibo. You better take a look. Shi Mengwan's voice was still a little dissatisfied. Are you my friend? Do you think of me as your best friend? How could you not tell me when something so dangerous happened to you? I'm just too busy to deal with it. Look at her. She was so busy these days that her feet could barely touch the ground. She really forgot to contact Shi Mengwan. You can't take care of it, right? You even asked me to look for news about you on Weibo. You're really something. Chapter 177. Su Qingsang hung up the phone and went to check Weibo. She found that there was a hashtag the most beautiful doctor hashtag on the local popular Weibo. The top post was a photo of her during the rescue in Qingyuan County. In the photo, she was kneeling and giving first aid to a patient. She didn't know who took the photo and posted it on the internet. The photo was a little blurry, but her facial features could be seen very clearly. There were over 10,000 reposts and over 100,000 likes. Su Qingsang looked at the photo and didn't think much about it. She just wondered which patient's family member took the photo. Su Qingsang didn't take it to heart at all. She continued to receive patients and perform surgeries. At night, she drove home by herself. Recently, her schedule didn't match with Hu Jinyao's. When she got home and put down her bag, Hu Jinyao was still awake. Honey, you're back? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. Have you eaten? What time is it? Hu Jinyao looked at the time. What's wrong? Haven't you eaten? Yes. Su Qingsang looked at him and thought that she was on the top of Weibo today. She couldn't help but take out her phone and share it with Hu Jinyao. Let me tell you something. What? Su Qingsang was too embarrassed to praise herself. She directly opened Weibo and put it in front of Hu Jinyao. The most beautiful doctor? Hu Jinyao stared at the screen for a while. It's only been 1 day and it's been reposted over 50,000 times and liked over 200,000 times? Huh. It went up again? Su Qingsang hadn't noticed it yet. She leaned over to look at the screen. I haven't noticed it yet. You purposely showed me this? Su Qingsang blushed a little. She looked away and felt a little uncomfortable. Can't I? Yes. But my wife is beautiful. I don't need them to judge her as the most beautiful doctor. Hu Jinyao kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek. Su Qingsang blushed. I didn't mean that. She didn't want him to praise her. She just wanted to show him that she was a celebrity. Then what do you mean? Hu Jinyao stared at her face and his eyes, which were as bright as stars, suddenly became deep. Speaking of which, wife, I've been a vegetarian since you went to the countryside. Su Qingsang looked at him and the smile on her face froze. When you came back, I sympathized with your hard work. I said that you were tired and let you rest for another 2 days. Come to think of it, we haven't had a good chat for more than half a month. Su Qingsang stood up abruptly and quickly took a big step back. I'll go take a shower first. That's good. Hu Jinyao nodded, and the smile on his face became more and more meaningful. It'll be better if you shower faster. Seeing Su Qingsang quickly dash into the bathroom, the smile on Hu Jinyao's face disappeared. He stared at the Weibo post for a long time, his expression solemn. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. He took out his phone and pressed a few numbers. Help me find out what's going on with the most beautiful doctor's Weibo. Is it a coincidence or is it intentional? Yes. After the investigation, the topic should disappear. That was right. Do it cleanly. It was a good thing that Su Qing-sang had become a celebrity on Weibo. However, he smelled something different. Now he only hoped that he was thinking too much. He threw his phone aside and found that Su Qing-sang's bag was still on the bed. Hua Jinyao picked it up and was about to help her put it aside. Chapter 178. Hua Jinyao picked up the bottle and glanced at it. One look was all it took to know what it was. He clenched the bottle and glanced in the direction of the bathroom with a complicated expression. Su Qing-sang came out of the shower with steam still on her body. She picked up the hairdryer to dry her hair. Before she started, someone took the hairdryer from her. She looked at Hua Jinyao's face in the mirror and he looked at her. I'll dry it for you. Su Qing-sang was a little embarrassed and reached out her hand. I can do it myself. It's not like I don't have hands. I like to help you. Hua Jinyao avoided her hand and gently lifted a strand of her hair. Su Qing-sang was not used to it. But seeing Hua Jinyao enjoying it, she couldn't bear to refuse him. She stared at Hua Jinyao in the mirror. From this angle, his face was really handsome. Then he looked very gentle when he focused on drying her hair. A strange feeling flashed through her heart, and Su Qing-sang's face suddenly turned a little red. The burning temperature on her face made Su Qing-sang extremely uncomfortable. However, Hua Jinyao had already dried her hair. He put down the hairdryer and leaned forward with his chin against her neck. What? You keep looking at me. Did you suddenly find that your husband is too handsome? Are you falling in love with me? Su Qing-sang blushed and moved her body to the side. Stop it. It's late. Go to sleep. Yes. It's late. Go to sleep. As he spoke, Hua Jinyao reached out and picked Su Qing-sang up. Su Qing-sang was startled and quickly wrapped her arms around Hua Jinyao's neck to prevent herself from falling. The moment her body touched the bed, even though it wasn't the first time, Su Qing-sang was still a little nervous. Speaking of which, they hadn't slept for more than half a month. Wife. After Hua Jinyao put her down, he didn't do anything else. He turned over and lay down beside her. His big hands clasped her waist and let her sleep against him. This change stunned Su Qing-sang. She turned to look at him as if she didn't understand why he let her go so easily today. Go to sleep. Hua Jinyao kissed her on the cheek. He didn't make any further moves. Su Qing-sang was even more surprised. Yesterday and the day before yesterday she clearly felt that he also wanted to. Just a moment ago he had said those words, but now he had no reaction at all. No, there's a reaction. She felt it. His face was a little uneasy, but more of it was filled with doubt. Hua Jinyao. What happened to him today? I'm very hot right now. Don't provoke me again. What are you talking about? Su Qing-sang turned over. She was tired after a whole day of work. She pulled his hand away and planned to sleep. Hua Jinyao put his arm around her again. Su Qing-sang clearly felt his excitement, but she didn't understand why he didn't continue. Honey. Hua Jinyao pressed his face against her neck. His hot breath tickled her. Just as she was about to move forward to hide, his next words made her whole body stiffen. Don't take that birth control pill anymore. Birth control pills? You saw it? Su Qing-sang didn't know how to react. Have a baby? At this stage she did not want to. Don't take that medicine anymore. It's not good for your body. I'll buy condoms tomorrow. You can tell me about this kind of thing in the future. Su Qing-sang's body had been very stiff. How could Hua Jinyao not feel it? He kissed her on the cheek and tightened his arms. Honey, I'm your husband. If you have any thoughts, you can tell me directly. Chapter 179. The room was so quiet that Su Qing-sang could hear her own heartbeat, one after another. Not only hers but also Hua Jinyao's. Su Qing-sang's body had been very stiff. She wasn't sure if Hua Jinyao was telling the truth. She had a hunch that he would be angry. I'm not angry. As if he knew what she was thinking, Hua Jinyao's voice rang in her ear. Well, I'm actually a little angry too. This kind of thing should be between the two of us. Of course, if you don't want to have children, you can discuss it with me. You're a doctor. You can't not know how harmful these drugs are. I hope you won't take them again. I didn't think of using contraceptives before. It was my mistake. Next time something like this happens, you can talk to me. Actually, it's not just you. I'm not ready to be a father either. Hua Jinyao's arm around her tightened. Su Qing-sang wanted to say something, but she felt that whatever she said would be useless. I also think it's more appropriate to have children when both of us are ready. I believe you think so, right? After listening to him talk for so long, Su Qingsang finally turned around. She looked at Hu Jinyao. The light from the bedside lamp shone on his face. His facial features looked a little blurry in the dark. When she looked into his eyes seriously, they were filled with her shadow. Su Qingsang gently nodded. Hu Jinyao, I admit that I'm not ready. I know. Hu Jinyao kissed her forehead. It's okay. I'm not ready either. Since we're not ready, then let's have children when we're both ready. Okay. Su Qingsang nodded gently. Looking at Hu Jinyao's face, she couldn't restrain her inner desire. She raised her hand, put it around Hu Jinyao's neck and kissed him. Hu Jinyao held her waist for a long time before finally letting her go. He buried his cheek in her neck. Don't provoke me again. Otherwise, I won't care if you take the medicine or not. Su Qingsang's face turned red. She quickly turned around and said, I'm sleepy. I want to sleep. Hu Jinyao gritted his teeth and bit her face in dissatisfaction. She was always like this, running away after provoking him. She was really too much. Su Qingsang was in pain, but she didn't dare to speak. Seeing that even her earlobes were red, Hu Jinyao finally got up and went to the bathroom to take a cold shower. As soon as he left, Su Qingsang pulled up the blanket and covered her face. Taking a cold shower in this weather was actually quite pitiful. However, she felt a warmth in her heart. Once again she felt that marriage was a good thing and Hu Jinyao was a good thing. The atmosphere in the Tianyu CEO's office was a little gloomy. Hu Jinyao glanced at Yang Wenchang. What do you mean? Just as you guessed, President Hua Misu's news has been at the top of the hot search list. It looks like there's a water army behind it. After we found out about it yesterday, we immediately sent out our PR team to suppress the trending topic. There's a ghostwriter? Yes. Not only were there fake reviewers, but there were also people who bought the trending searches. But President Hua, how do you know someone did this on purpose? Recently, Xiao Qing's affair with Yang Liufei caused such a big commotion, but it's only this popular. There must be a reason behind this abnormality. I believe this matter is not simple. Chapter 180. We're already looking into it, but they're using an internet phone and hid their ID address. We need some time. Okay. Keep an eye on this. Then tell me the results. And President Hua, the intercom rang. Hu Jinyao pressed the speaker button. President Hua, He Xiankai from his company is downstairs. He wants to see you. I won't see him. Hu Jinyao looked up and found Yang Wenchang smiling awkwardly. President Hua, this is something else I want to talk to you about. I don't know how Mr. He got in touch with Chairman Hua. Chairman Hua said that we'll cancel the bid and work with the He family. Yang Wenchang's voice became softer and softer. He shrunk his neck and wanted to find a hole to hide in. Do I have the final say in this company or my dad? Of course it's you. But Yang Wenchang didn't want to admit it. President Hua, I don't think you need to compete with the chairman. He still has 30% of Tianyu's shares. Hu Jinyao's face darkened. If you think my dad is willing to let you sell your shares, I don't mind if you go back to Rong City with my dad right now. President Hua, I didn't mean that. Okay. Get out. I won't see He Xiankai. If he can come up with a bid that I like, this project will belong to the He family. Yes. Yang Wenchang didn't dare to say anything else. He turned around and left. He felt cold sweat on his back as he left. He Xianyao saw He Xiankai walk in and immediately walked up to him. Brother, how did it go? Did Brother Jinyao agree? No. He Xiankai looked at his sister. I told you it wouldn't work, but you didn't listen. Are you okay now? How is that possible? Does Hu Jinyao not listen to Uncle Hua anymore? If he listened to his family, why would he come to Lin City alone? He Xiankai sighed inwardly. Now I can only hope that the bid is approved. Otherwise it's not a big deal if we don't get the deal and make money. I'm afraid that the business landscape in Rong City will have to be rearranged. Brother. He Xuanyao's face was full of uneasiness. What if Hu Jinyao deliberately didn't let the He family pass? Brother, I think there's another person who can make Hu Jinyao yield. Xianyao, stop messing around. You can go back to Rong City in a few days. You don't have to worry about the project here. Brother. He Xianyao didn't want to leave. It's okay that Hu Jinyao doesn't like me. But there's one person he can't possibly not like, right? Who? Su Ruoli. He Xianyao thought of the woman that even she felt inferior to. Don't forget. Sister Ruoli is the daughter-in-law appointed by the Hua family. The Hua and Su families are engaged. Stop fooling around. Hu Jinyao is already married. He's married. but I believe that Sister Ruoli is different to him. I've decided I'm going to call Sister Ruoli now. Xianyao? Xianyao? Shen Kai wanted to stop her, but Xianyao went back to her room with her phone. In the end he couldn't stop it because he also wanted to know. Did Huijinyao still care about Su Ruoli as much as he did before? If he did, then there was still a chance for their cooperation this time. Chapter 181. Thanks to yesterday's Weibo post, a bunch of patients came to see her today. Some of the patients were not even pregnant at all. They just wanted to see the so-called most beautiful doctor. It had only been a morning, but she was already exhausted. She took the opportunity to look at Weibo while she was in the bathroom and found that her post had long been removed from the hot search list. There were no more likes like yesterday. Before she could heave a sigh of relief. There were still many patients and pregnant women who came in the afternoon. The number of patients she received was more than 10 times the usual number, which made Su Qingsang very tired. Even Huijinyao could see that she was tired until she got off work. What's wrong with you? He knew that she was too tired from work yesterday, so he specifically said that he would pick her up today. I'm fine. There are quite a lot of patients today. Su Qingsang slumped in her seat. People fear fame as pigs fear getting fat. I understand now. You have a lot of patients today? Because of that Weibo post? Huijinyao pondered for a moment. There was indeed something wrong with that Weibo post. But did he just want Su Qingsang to be lighter? Smart. You're right. Su Qingsang gave him an appreciative look. Just because of that Weibo post. And patients came to see me today. It's fine if you say that it's only obstetrics and gynecology. Even those who were not from the obstetrics and gynecology department came. They asked me if I could take a picture with them. What's going on? They were all patients, so Su Qingsang couldn't just kick them out. He sent people over to maintain order. Some of them were patients and had come to see a doctor. The obstetrics and gynecology department is so busy today. I'm glad that Chief Zhang and Chief Chen aren't petty people. Otherwise they'll probably give me a hard time if I make such a big commotion. Who dares? Huijinyao rubbed the top of her head and said, My wife is so hard-working and professional. I can't wait to praise her. How can I make things difficult for you? Blip. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. Director Zhang has been a doctor for almost 30 years. Chief Chen also had 20 years of experience. They are professional, dedicated, serious, and responsible. I don't care if they are professional or not. Anyway, my wife is the most beautiful. That's enough. Are you going to go home or not? It was getting late into autumn, and the nights in Lin City came earlier than usual. The sky outside was starting to darken. Yes, but we still have to go buy something first. Buy what? Su Qingsang smiled at Huijinyao but didn't answer her question. For some reason she felt a little flustered. 20 minutes later, Su Qingsang glanced at the bag of Okamoto super thin in the back seat, then looked at the smile on Huijinyao's face. She couldn't help but blush. Why did you buy so many? She had fainted just now. She actually accompanied Huijinyao to buy this. It was fine if he bought this. He even bought so much. It was fine if he bought a lot. And all of them were taking large sizes. The way the shop assistant looked at her just now wasn't right. She was still feeling uneasy. If it's consumed quickly, then buy more. Otherwise it would be troublesome to run around all the time. Huijinyao grinned, showing his white teeth. Su Qingsang felt her gums hurt a little, so she spoke without thinking. You bought so much. It's enough for us to use for a year. Honey. Huijinyao cleared his throat and glanced at Su Qingsang with a hint of resentment. Are you questioning my ability? Yes. That's it. It'll be used up in a month. Huijinyao's words almost made Su Qingsang fall off the seat. You. Chapter 182. Me what? Huijinyao winked at her as he drove. Honey, don't worry. I'll try my best to prove to you that this won't take a year. You don't have to prove it. You really don't have to. Su Qingsang was scared to death. Take it easy. A man's kidney really needs to be maintained. The car suddenly stopped. If she hadn't been wearing a seatbelt, she would have hit the car in front of her. Huijinyao. Wife. Don't worry. Huijinyao steered the car again. He didn't forget to give Su Qingsang a look. Not only can I prove that these won't take a year, I can also prove that my kidneys are fine. Furthermore, it has a permanent battery life and will never lose power. Su Qingsang was stunned. Looking at Huijinyao's eager face, she wanted to cry but had no tears. Huijinyao. I believe you. You don't have to prove it. No. I must prove it. Wujinyao. Don't worry. I will definitely make you happy. Su Qingsang felt a headache when she heard him emphasize the word happy. It wasn't that she didn't want him to make her unhappy. She was only worried about her waist. When he got home, Hu Jinyao spent the whole night trying to prove to Su Qingsang that not only was his waist and kidneys fine, but that he could also last forever without a power outage. Su Qingsang was in trouble. When he woke up in the morning, he felt weak all over. He had no strength at all. When she entered the hospital, her complexion even attracted the attention of Deputy Chief Chen. Qingsang, you must be exhausted yesterday, right? Do you want me to put you off? No need. She was not tired because of the hospital. Take it easy. Deputy Chief Chen had also seen the Weibo post. You're the most beautiful doctor in our hospital now. In the future, it will be the trademark of our obstetrics and gynecology department. Take care of yourself. Director Chen, you're teasing me too. Chief Chen waved the medical records in his hand and went out. The popularity of Weibo had died down, but the number of patients today did not decrease by much. After that, Su Qingsang even had her meals in her office. She finished them in 5 minutes. Finally, after noon there were fewer patients. However, she received a patient who was relatively familiar to her. Li Rongrong was more than 4 months pregnant. He could already see her stomach beginning to swell. She had come alone, and when she entered, her face was pale and she did not look well. Su Qingsang was stunned when she saw her. She hadn't forgotten how this woman had made a scene in the hospital. However, the doctor still had to do what he had to do. Let's take an ultrasound first, then do a routine examination. When was your last period? Dr. Su, didn't we ask about this last time? Li Rongrong did not cooperate at all. She had one hand on her belly, looking very protective of the baby. Did you bring your medical record? No. Since you didn't, then answer again. I forgot. Isn't this your business? Yes. It's our business. So please pay the fee now and then do the examination. Li Rongrong didn't take the paper in her hand. Instead, she covered her stomach with one hand and looked like she was in pain. My stomach hurts. I can't move. Where does it hurt? Get up and check. It hurts everywhere. My whole stomach hurts. Chapter 183. Li Rongrong leaned most of her weight on Su Qingsang. Doctor, can you help me to get an ultrasound? I'm in a lot of pain right now. Li Rongrong, you're the prettiest doctor. You can't be so cold-blooded, can you? Su Qingsang nodded. She knew that Li Rongrong was here to make things difficult for her. She didn't say much and called a nurse to help Li Rongrong register. Then she called the internal line to contact the ultrasound room. She helped Li Rongrong up and walked out. The clinic was on the 3rd floor and the ultrasound room was on the 2nd floor. There were many people in the hospital, so Li Rongrong had to take the stairs. Su Qingsang followed her. When they reached the stairs, Li Rongrong suddenly stopped. Su Qingsang, are you very proud now? What? She didn't understand why she was talking about this. Su Qingsang was confused. Wei Lenin doesn't want me and he doesn't acknowledge the child in my belly. He even blamed me for you marrying another man. That's your business. Su Qingsang didn't want to get involved in their business. You should go find Wei Lenin. I did. Do you think I didn't? Li Rongrong said with a face full of hatred. But do you know what he said to me? What? He asked me to die with the child. When Li Rongrong said this, she moved closer to Su Qingsang with a fierce look on her face. This is his child. He actually asked me to die with the child? This woman was emotionally unstable. Su Qingsang took a deep breath. Calm down. If there's anything you can discuss it with him. There's no room for discussion. Li Rongrong suddenly reached out to hug Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was startled and instinctively raised her hand to push her away. But Li Rongrong had already let go of her hand. The stairs were behind her. Su Qingsang was shocked, but it was too late to stop her. She could only watch Li Rongrong's body fall down the stairs. Li Rongrong kept rolling down the stairs accompanied by a scream. Su Qingsang was stunned. She rushed down as soon as she realized what was going on. Li Rongrong's face and head were covered in wounds. Beneath him was a pool of blood. She didn't look well. Her face was pale, but when she saw Su Qingsang coming down, she smiled at her. Su Qingsang, if my child and I are going to die, I'm going to drag you down with us. Li Rongrong. Su Qingsang was completely stunned by the scene in front of her. She looked at the pool of blood under Li Rongrong and the people who had gathered because of this incident. Hurry. Help me. It was a mess. Su Qingsang and Director Zhang tried their best to save Li Rongrong's life. In the end, her child was not saved. The 4-month-old baby boy had already taken shape, but it was gone just like that. Su Qingsang had never thought that Li Rongrong could be so cruel. In order to get back at her, Li Rongrong was willing to gamble with her unborn child. Was she crazy? Su Qingsang couldn't tell what she was feeling. She took out her phone and called Wei Lenin. No matter what, this child was Wei Lenin's. Whether there was or not, Wei Lenin should know. Wei Lenin arrived an hour later. Li Rongrong, who had lost a lot of blood, had not woken up yet. He saw Su Qingsang first. "You're here." Su Qingsang was not surprised to see Wei Lenin's impatient and dissatisfied look. Chapter 184. Su Qingsang briefly explained the situation to him. After that, she looked at Wei Lenin. He stood there and didn't seem to have much of a reaction. He just confirmed, "Is the child really gone?" "Yes, really gone." Su Qingsang still felt a little uncomfortable thinking about the pool of blood. "All right." Wei Lenin didn't have the patience to listen anymore. "I will help her pay the hospital fees." "This is not about the hospital fees." Su Qingsang was very angry at Wei Lenin's attitude. Li Rongrong lost a lot of blood. Although she is out of danger after the emergency treatment, we still need to be careful. What does that have to do with me? Wei Lenin didn't seem to be moved at all. "Are you saying that I should hire a nurse?" "All right. I understand." Su Qingsang didn't speak. She took half a step back and looked at Wei Lenin. It was still the same face. She had dated him before. But she never knew that Wei Lenin had this side to him. At that moment, she suddenly felt very lucky that she broke off the marriage. "Qingsang, don't you know who I like? Do you think I would be with a woman I don't like? If you don't like her, then why did you get her pregnant? She set me up." Wei Lenin said it with a confident face. Seeing that Su Qingsang was obviously going to lecture him, he said impatiently, "All right. I will hire someone to take care of her. You don't have to worry about these things." Su Qingsang didn't want to care about this anymore. She could see that Wei Lenin didn't want this child at all. Even if Li Rongrong gave birth, he probably wouldn't take responsibility. Wei Lenin paid the hospital fees, called a nurse over and left. Su Qingsang looked at Li Rongrong, who was still lying alone on the hospital bed. Before she got off work, she called a nurse to take care of her. It had been a very tiring day. When Su Qingsang got off work and walked to the parking lot, her phone rang. "Qingsang, look at Weibo." Shi Mingwan's voice on the other end of the phone sounded very anxious. "What's wrong? What happened?" "You're famous again, but this time." Before Shi Mingwan could finish, Su Qingsang saw Hu Jinyao's car stop not far from her. His car had stopped in a hurry. It was obvious that he was in a hurry to find her. "Jinyao? Mingwan, I'll call you later." "Let's talk later," she said to Shi Mingwan, who was on the other end of the phone. "Nope." Hu Jinyao was already there. Su Qingsang quickly hung up the phone. "Honey." Hu Jinyao looked a little anxious. "You're off work, aren't you? Hurry up and get on the car." "What's wrong?" Su Qingsang looked confused. Before she could ask clearly, Hu Jinyao had already brought her to the car and opened the door for her to get in. "Hu Jinyao." Su Qingsang called him. From the corner of his eye, he saw a group of people rushing towards him. She was startled. Before she could react, Hu Jinyao had already gotten into the car and started it. The people behind him had already started walking into the hospital. Su Qingsang didn't understand and turned to look at Hu Jinyao. "What's wrong? What happened?" "You're trending again." Chapter 185. Is it hashtag the most beautiful doctor hashtag or hashtag the most vicious doctor hashtag? Dr. S, who was once named the most beautiful doctor by the citizens of the city, pushed a pregnant woman down the stairs today. The picture was of her standing on the stairs and Li Rongrong falling down the stairs. The picture was very clear. Su Qingsang's raised hand and Li Rongrong's falling body. Su Qingsang looked at the Weibo post and was dumbfounded. The vicious doctor pushed a pregnant woman down the stairs because of an old grudge? She glanced at Hu Jinyao, who was driving seriously. "Who wrote this?" "Don't worry about who wrote it for now." Hu Jinyao's face was serious. He had a meeting in the afternoon and 2 cooperation plans to be discussed. So he didn't pay attention to the news on Weibo at first. By the time he found out, the topic hashtag the most vicious doctor hashtag had become a trending topic. But this time, the number of comments was much more than the number of likes. There was a lot of scolding. They were all scolding Su Qingsang. "I didn't push her." Su Qingsang felt a little ridiculous. Su Qingsang fell down by herself. And at that time she wanted to hold her but didn't hold her firmly. I know. These 3 words showed that Hu Jinyao trusted her. Su Qingsang couldn't help but look at him again. The sky was getting dark, but his side profile was as handsome as ever in the shadows. You trust me? You are my wife. Who else would I trust? Hu Jinyao reached out and squeezed her palm. I trust my wife. She would never push someone down the stairs. Su Qingsang's lips were tightly pursed. The warmth of his palms spread from the back of her hand to her heart. Thank you. He trusted her without asking for any reason, which really moved her. Silly. Hu Jinyao patted the back of her hand. You're my wife. You don't need to thank me. Su Qingsang shook her head and signaled him to concentrate on driving with her eyes. She lowered her head and scrolled through Weibo again. The top Weibo post had been reposted more than 50,000 times. It was accompanied by all kinds of scolding and attacks. Even the Weibo account that she had registered before, but hadn't used much, was found. The furthest Weibo post she had posted was a few months ago. At that time he had just delivered a pregnant woman. Gu Zhao's Weibo post now had nearly 10,000 comments, all of which were scolding her. Su Qingsang had never heard so many vicious words. Her face darkened. Her forehead was throbbing and she had a terrible headache. She didn't want to watch anymore. He put his phone away. Don't worry. You'll be fine. Su Qingsang shook her head. She wasn't as optimistic as Hu Jinyao. I think the trouble this time is not small. But it's not big. Hu Jinyao glanced at her and gave a rather pertinent suggestion. You didn't push her. Even if they're hyping up the topic like this, there's no evidence. It was just a rumor. You can ignore it. How can I ignore it? Su Qingsang frowned. What if the hospital suspends me? You know, just like last time, the power of netizens is quite scary. That's great. I won't do it then. The car had already stopped at the apartment building. Hu Jinyao parked the car and took out the key. Since they don't believe you, then I won't be a doctor. Won't be a doctor? Su Qingsang couldn't smile. If I don't be a doctor, what can I do? It's not that you don't want to be a doctor. It's that you don't want to be a doctor in Lin City. Hu Jinyao turned to look at her. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. Honey, have you ever thought about going somewhere else to develop your career? Somewhere else? Where? Chapter 186. To Rong City? Su Qingsang had heard of Rong City. It was the largest city in the northern province. Yes. Hu Jinyao nodded. You should also know that I am from Rong City, and I have always wanted to take you back to Rong City. The hospital in Lin City can't keep you. But Rong City can. You want me to be a doctor in Rong City? Why not? Because of your talent. You can go anywhere. It doesn't have to be in Lin City. You can be a doctor anywhere? Why do you have to stay in Lin City? Su Qingsang understood what he meant, but she looked at the seriousness in Hu Jinyao's eyes. Suddenly she shook her head. No, I won't go to Rong City. Honey, listen to me. Su Qingsang held his hand. What I said just now is the worst-case scenario. But the hospital may not treat me like that. Even if it is true, as long as I don't agree, they dare not do anything to me. She didn't push Li Rongrong. She had a clear conscience. I don't want to admit defeat like this. If I really leave, then even if I didn't push her, others will say that I did. Even if I have to leave Lin City and go somewhere else, I want to leave openly and with a clean record. I don't want to leave with the reputation of such a vicious doctor. That's not what I want. Her gentle and beautiful face was filled with rare determination. Her eyes were as bright as the moon. Looking at Su Qingsang, Hu Jinyao suddenly reached out to her, gently rubbed the top of her head and said, Yes. Okay, I believe you. Do you need my help? No. Su Qingsang shook her head. Don't worry. I can handle it. As soon as she finished speaking, her phone rang. It was Deputy Director Li. Director Li? Su Qingsang glanced at Hu Jinyao. He was about to open the car door when he stopped to look at her. Suspended? Su Qingsang was stunned. May I ask why? She listened to Director Li's words with a sullen face. He said that there were still reporters in the hospital. Just like last time, the hospital was blocked again. But this time it wasn't the patient's family but a group of reporters. After the news came out on Weibo, the group of reporters kept staring at the hospital. The hospital administration had just blocked this matter, but they still had to show their attitude towards the public. I didn't push her. Su Qingsang was very calm. She was neither angry nor agitated. You can look at the surveillance cameras in the yard. Or through any other methods to verify it. I really didn't push her. Dr. Su, we're all willing to believe you. But the people did not believe it, the media did not believe it, and the patients did not believe it. Right now, we need to temporarily suspend you to give the public an explanation. As for you, just bear with it a little and rest at home for a few days, okay? Dean Li, Su Qing-sang wasn't willing to accept such an arrangement. I can't be suspended. Wouldn't my suspension be equivalent to my acquiescence? Then what do you want? Do you know how many reporters are outside right now? If you don't come to work now, you can also avoid the limelight. President Li, all right. Dr. Su, don't be too stubborn. Just let it be. Su Qing-sang looked at the phone, which had been hung up. Hu Jinyao was looking at her with concern. Honey? I'm fine. Su Qing-sang shook her head. The hospital suspended me from work and asked me to rest at home for a few days. Hu Jinyao's face darkened. Just a suspension? Chapter 187. Is there even a need to investigate? It's impossible for you to do such a thing. Thinking of Li Rongrong, Hu Jinyao's face darkened. How is that woman now? I don't know. She wasn't awake when I left. Su Qing-sang smiled bitterly. She fell by herself, but she did it on purpose. This woman is not normal at all. Just ignore it. I believe that your innocence will be proven in the end. It's my fault. I clearly knew that she didn't get along with me, but I wasn't vigilant. How can you be blamed for this? You're a doctor. You definitely don't think too much about it. That was right. She's a doctor. Doctors have the heart of a parent. How could he really be indifferent to the patient's pain? You know what? When she fell, she said that she wanted to drag me down with her. I really can't imagine that she would sacrifice her own child just to harm me. Hu Jinyao frowned. He was thinking about another possibility. A few days ago she was the most beautiful doctor on Weibo, and today she was the most vicious doctor. There must be someone behind this. What's wrong? Su Qing-sang saw the serious look on his face and was confused. Have you ever thought that she did all these things prepared? Her goal was to harm you. Have you thought about it? Su Qing-sang wasn't stupid. How could she not think of that? She did it to frame me, and to frame me she didn't even want her own child. Have you ever thought that there is someone behind Li Rongrong? What do you mean? I'm not sure now, but I don't think it's that simple. Su Qing-sang saw the serious look on his face and didn't think too much about it. That's not possible, is it? I'm not a big shot, not to mention that Li Rongrong and I did have some disagreements. Though she thought nothing of the unpleasantness. Wu Jinyao was not so optimistic. His instincts as a businessman made him used to thinking deeper and further into things. Jinyao? Let's go upstairs and eat first. Wu Jinyao got out of the car first. However, there was a flash of gloominess in his eyes. No matter who it was, he would not allow anyone to touch Su Qing-sang like that. If it was only Li Rongrong's scheme, he would only look for Li Rongrong. If there was someone else behind him, he wouldn't let it go just like that, no matter who it was. Wu Jinyao. Su Qing-sang had already gotten out of the car. Noticing that his footsteps were a little fast, she called out to him. Hu Jinyao turned around, and the gloominess on his face was gone. Honey, don't think about it. The emperor has the most power when it comes to eating. Let's go. Su Qing-sang had been a little worried at first, but now he had almost diverted her attention. No matter what would happen tomorrow, no matter what would happen, at least she still had Hu Jinyao. The next day, Su Qing-sang thought for a long time and decided to go to the hospital. There were some things she needed to figure out. Even if she knew that Li Rongrong did it on purpose, she might not tell her the truth. Hu Jinyao decided to accompany her. He insisted on being with her, no matter how much she resisted. As expected, there were many reporters at the entrance of the hospital. Su Qing-sang looked at the crowd and smiled bitterly in the car. I didn't know that I would become a celebrity in Lin City one day. I'm fine. Once we prove our innocence, you'll be even more famous. I don't want to be more famous. I just want to prove my innocence. Chapter 188. You will. Hu Jinyao encouraged her. Let's go in through the back door. Inside the door, a nurse she knew greeted Su Qing-sang. She smiled at the nurse. Those who were willing to greet her at this time were really on her side. She went upstairs to the obstetrics and gynecology department. She knew where Li Rongrong's ward was, but she didn't expect to see reporters at the door at the end of the corridor. The nurse and the doctor were about to drive them away. Unexpectedly, Li Rongrong asked the nurse to call the reporters in. Su Qing-sang glanced at Hu Jinyao. He was also looking at her. The two of them looked at each other, then walked to the ward together. The door was open. The reporters were all inside. The nurse was hired by Wei Lenin. Su Qingsang had seen her yesterday. At this moment, the nurse was helping Li Rongrong up. Her face was pale and she looked very weak. Su Qingsang looked at the half-closed door. The two of them stood behind the door and looked at the scene inside. Miss Li, are you the pregnant woman who was pushed down the stairs yesterday? Miss Li, you agreed to be interviewed by us. Are you going to respond to that incident? Miss Li, is it really like what the internet says, that you were pushed down by the most beautiful doctor? Questions were thrown out one after another. Li Rongrong looked at them and smiled weakly. Her line of sight was blocked by the reporters. She couldn't see the door. Even if she couldn't see Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao from where they were standing. Thank you for coming here to be interviewed. I would like to tell you about what happened yesterday. Let more people know about it. Su Qingsang stood there. She could almost guess what Li Rongrong was going to say. I'm sure I'm the pregnant woman who was pushed down the stairs yesterday. Sure enough, Li Rongrong's first sentence was meaningful. I'm also very surprised that Su Qingsang would do that. Hu Jinyao's face darkened. He stepped forward and was about to walk inside. Su Qingsang held his arm and didn't let him in. Hu Jinyao glanced at her and understood what she meant. He stood there without moving. Su Qingsang? So you know that doctor? Miss Li, why did Dr. Su push you? Because. Li Rongrong said a few words and suddenly burst into tears. She was so emotional, and the reporters waited patiently for her to finish crying. Li Rongrong didn't cry for long, only a minute or two. After she stopped, she sniffed and took out a tissue to wipe her tears. She had an innocent face and looked pure and weak. Some of the male reporters present were filled with compassion. Actually, Dr. Su and I have some conflicts. Li Rongrong told her about what had happened with Wei Lenin. Of course, she told the same story. They said that Wei Lenin was pressured by his family and that Su Qingsang's family used their power to oppress him. In short, the more pitiful she was, the better, and the more domineering Su Qingsang was, the better. No. She didn't even need to say that Su Qingsang was bad. She just needed to point it out. These reporters and the media would come up with their own melodramatic feuds. Su Qingsang stood there with a cold face. After listening to everything, she stepped forward and was about to go in. This time it was Hu Jinyao who stopped her. What? Su Qingsang said in a low voice. She wants me to go in and reason with her. No. Hu Jinyao squeezed her palm. His slightly narrowed eyes were full of danger. We're not going in now. Chapter 189. Let's go. Hu Jinyao took her hand and walked outside. Let's go home first. Hu Jinyao. What did he want to do? I have a better idea. Hu Jinyao's voice was soft, but it was calming. Su Qingsang glanced at him and finally decided to believe his words. What's your idea? Didn't she accuse you of pushing her downstairs today? We don't need to confront her now. There are so many reporters inside. No matter what you say, you can only argue if you go in now. Reporters had always been eager to see the world in chaos. When the time came, it would be a mess. Then it will be a mess. Li Rongrong had nothing to do and was wasting time here. But Su Qingsang didn't. What he wanted was to hit the nail on the head. Yes. That was why she wanted to confront him. She didn't believe, Qingsang. Hu Jinyao stopped and turned to look at her seriously. Do you believe me? Su Qingsang looked at his expression, bit her lip, and finally nodded. I believe you. It was rare for her to believe someone. She said that she really believed Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao smiled and hugged Su Qingsang. Qingsang, believe me. I will make her admit that everything she said today was to frame you. How could it be possible? Li Rongrong had said so much today. Could she betray him again? Didn't you just say you believe me? Su Qingsang nodded hesitantly. Hu Jinyao took her hand and said, Let's go. Let's go home. Go home? Yes. No. Let's go play today. I've always heard that there is a mountain in Lin City. The scenery is very beautiful in autumn. Don't you want to go with me? It was just after the Mid-Autumn Festival. In late autumn, the maple leaves on the mountain should be red. It was good. Su Qingsang glanced at her feet. I'm wearing high heels today. It's okay. We'll buy a pair of shoes later. I heard that the mountain is not high anyway. It's not high. I've been there once with my classmates, but not in autumn. Speaking of which, I've never seen what autumn is like in Jingshan. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. Hu Jinyao left without hesitation, looking relaxed. Su Qingsang couldn't argue with him, so she followed him into the car. The two of them went nearby to buy a pair of comfortable sports shoes. Then he bought some snacks and water. Jingshan was about 10 kilometers away from Lin City. It wasn't far. The so-called mountain in this southern city was only about 1,000 meters above sea level. Because there were a few famous scenic spots on the mountain, a road was specially built halfway up the mountain in the early years. The car drove to the parking lot on the mountainside. There was a flight of stairs further up. It was time to walk by itself. Su Qingsang got out of the car first. The mountain breeze blew against her face, making her take a deep breath. So comfortable. The weather was good. It was a refreshing autumn day. The mountain breeze was neither hot nor cold. It gave people a very comfortable feeling. Wu Jinyao got out of the car and walked up to her. Let's go. I've never been here before. You have to be my tour guide. Sure. The comfortable environment made Su Qingsang forget about the troubles she had been having. She led the way up the stairs. Wu Jinyao picked up the snacks and water he had prepared in the bag and followed her. The stairs were very long. After walking for a while, Su Qingsang began to feel tired. Slow down. There's no hurry anyway. After the Mid-Autumn Festival, the temperature here was very suitable. Wu Jinyao walked in front of her and reached out to hold her hand. Come on. I'll hold your hand. Su Qingsang panted. Looking at Wu Jinyao's calm face, she felt a burst of jealousy. Chapter 190. She hadn't exercised for a long time and she was exhausted. Your stamina is so weak. Wu Jinyao glanced at her and seemed to think of something. Next time, I think you should exercise more. My stamina is not bad. Your stamina is too good. Su Qingsang was out of breath again after saying a few words. Wu Jinyao couldn't help but laugh. He looked at the bench next to the steps in front of him and stopped. How about we take a break? Su Qingsang couldn't have asked for more. The two of them sat down on the bench and Wu Jinyao handed her a bottle of water. Drink some water. Su Qingsang took it, took 2 sips and suddenly stood up. She quickly walked up a few steps, then turned to look at Wu Jinyao. Look over there. Wu Jinyao followed. In front of him was a large area of rocks with a Danxia landform. The shape was peculiar and the landscape was unique. I haven't been here for a long time. They had all forgotten. Halfway up the mountain was the largest Danxia landform rock in Lin City. This area was called the 5-colored Danxia. Look, isn't that color beautiful? Yes. Wu Jinyao nodded. It was indeed good. I remember there's a maple forest further up. In this season, the maple leaves should be red. That's great. Isn't it great that we're here? Yeah. Su Qingsang nodded. Because it wasn't the weekend, there were almost no tourists on the mountain. She had gotten off lightly. Su Qingsang took out her phone to take a picture. After taking pictures of the scenery, she glanced at Wu Jinyao and finally asked him to take a group photo with her. After taking only 2 pictures, the man started to play tricks again. Pop. Wu Jinyao planted a big kiss on her face. Su Qingsang blushed. She glared at him, walked past him and continued to walk up. Scenic Mountain was not big and there were not many scenic spots. There were only a few of them, so it was easy to walk through them. However, these scenic spots were exquisite and the weather was good today. Su Qingsang's photos were beautiful. She was also quite satisfied. Wu Jinyao had been staring at her. Looking at the faint smile on her beautiful face, he felt a certain part of his heart soften. The two of them walked to the last scenic spot in Jingshan. It was the stone forest at the top of the mountain. This stone forest wasn't big, but it was unique. It was arranged in picturesque disorder like a chessboard. He felt like he was in the middle of a chess game. Outside the stone forest was the highest point of Scenic Mountain. You will rise to the top and take in all the mountains. Wu Jinyao stepped forward and put his arm around her waist. I didn't know that my wife was such a talented woman. Su Qingsang couldn't stand him. I learned it in elementary school. Everyone can recite it. I don't care. My wife is the best. Su Qingsang couldn't take it anymore. She looked ahead and said, actually, compared to nature, humans are really too small. Yes. Say life is so short. Why are some people unwilling to live a good life, look forward, and work hard to manage their own lives? Wu Jinyao knew that she was thinking about Li Rongrong again, so he turned her body to face him. Because these people are blind to the truth. They don't know what they want. Su Qingsang nodded. Yeah, some people live their whole lives without knowing what they want. Who said that? I know very well what I want. What? You? Wu Jinyao hugged her waist tightly and kissed her on the cheek. I want you? The suppressed voice was extremely pleasant to the ears, revealing a kind of languid and sexy feeling. Su Qingsang blushed. Chapter 191. Hua Jinyao wasn't joking with her. He leaned over and kissed her as if he was really going to do something to her. Su Qingsang was startled. Just as she was about to avoid his face, she heard footsteps behind her. Hua Jinyao also heard it. He let go of Su Qingsang and took a step back. The two of them turned around and looked behind them. There was more than one person coming. It was a group. Su Qingsang saw the tall man at a glance. If she remembered correctly, this man seemed to be the big brother Shi Mingwan mentioned last time. Why was he here? Hua Jinyao also saw the man and raised his eyebrows. Why was he here? Beside the man was a petite and slender woman in a wedding dress. She was obviously tired and was panting. Brother Hausa, slow down. The petite woman took a few steps and realized that Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang were also there. She was stunned for a moment. Zhan Hausa turned around and helped her up. I told them to handle the post-processing, but you insisted on doing it yourself. It's better to do it myself. Qin Feifei panted and looked away from Hua Jinyao. Only then did Su Qingsang see that there was a group of people behind the two of them. Those people were holding all kinds of photography equipment in their hands. Looking at the wedding dress on the petite woman's body, what else was there to not understand? This group of people chose the scenic spots in Jingshan to take wedding photos? They were really in a good mood. As he spoke, Zhan Hausa had already walked in front of Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang. Mr. Hua, Mr. Zhan, you are in a good mood. Hua Jinyao interrupted him and reached out to shake his hand. He didn't let him call him that. You came up the mountain to take wedding photos. Zhan Hausa reached out and clasped his hands. Hua Jinyao slightly exerted force. Zhan Hausa narrowed his eyes and chuckled. You're welcome. Mr. Hua is in a good mood. The Hua family obviously paused. Hua Jinyao understood Zhan Hausa's gaze. Yes, the weather is good today. I brought my wife out to get some fresh air. As Hua Jinyao spoke, he reached out and put his arm around Su Qingsang's waist. Hello, Mrs. Hua. Hello. Su Qingsang glanced at Hua Jinyao. Did he know this man? Qingsang, this is President Zhan. He has a partnership with our company. Brother Hausa. Qin Feifei bit her lip and looked at Zhan Hausa and Su Qingsang. They are, Feifei, this is Hua Jinyao from Tianyu. Zhan Hausa introduced Hua Jinyao directly. This is his wife. Hello. Qin Feifei nodded as if she had thought of something. Heaven Domain? Are you going to take wedding photos? Hua Jinyao smiled and interrupted Qin Feifei. The sun is a little bright now. I'm afraid it'll be hot. I'm fine. We'll go to the dark side to shoot. Zhan Hausa's physique was comparable to Hua Jinyao's. He was tall and handsome. Now, he was looking at Hua Jinyao's face with an indecipherable gaze. Qin Feifei looked at Zhan Hausa and then at Hua Jinyao. She had a feeling that she had seen this Hua Jinyao before, but she had never been involved in the business world, so she didn't recognize him. Hua Jinyao smiled and said, if that's the case, I won't bother you anymore. We're done playing, so we'll take our leave first. Take care, Mr. Hua. Hua Jinyao nodded and walked past them with his arm around Su Qingsang's waist. Su Qingsang looked at the two of them and felt that something was wrong. Chapter 192. Seeing that she was deep in thought, Hua Jinyao moved closer to her and held her waist tightly with one hand. Honey, are you tired after playing for so long? Let's go down the mountain for dinner. Okay. Honey, what do you want to eat? Hua Jinyao put his arm around her waist and looked at her with a faint smile. Anything. Whatever is fine. Su Qingsang was indeed hungry. How about Sichuan cuisine? Okay. They walked away slowly. It was a normal conversation, but it surprised Zhan Hausa. He didn't expect Hua Jinyao to have such a side to him. Also, his wife didn't seem to know who he was. That was interesting. Zhan Hausa still remembered how Hua Jinyao was so powerful when he was negotiating with Tianyu. The Hua Jinyao was obviously different from the one in his memory. Was he good at pretending, or was he just like that in front of Mrs. Hua? He didn't know. Brother Hausa. Qin Feifei saw and heard it too. She turned to look at Zhan Hausa with expectation in her eyes. Zhan Hausa was very nice to her, but it seemed to be a little far from what she wanted. She knew that he treated her as a sister, not a couple. She knew that he married her to repay a debt of gratitude, but she really wanted him to treat her as a woman he loved. What's wrong? His gentle voice was filled with affection. He looked at her with extreme gentleness, but she wasn't in his eyes. Qin Feifei felt a little bitter. She put her arm around Zhan Hausa's arm and said, Brother Hausa, let's go take some photos. Okay. Zhan Hausa nodded and let her hold his arm, but that was all. There was no more. Chen Feifei looked at his cold face, gritted her teeth, tiptoed and kissed him on the cheek. Zhang Hao's brows furrowed imperceptibly, but he held her hand and walked forward as if nothing had happened. Su Qingsang was a little tired when she got back to the car. She sat there thinking about that man. Hua Jinyao, are you familiar with that man? Not really, but we've worked together. Hua Jinyao glanced at her casually. What's wrong? He doesn't look simple. Honey, are you praising him? Sort of. He's handsome too. He had a good figure. Looks pretty powerful. Honey, he's not as good as me. Yes. But you just called him young Master Zhan? Hua Jinyao blinked and said, it's his special hobby. He likes to be called that. Really? Su Qingsang looked at him suspiciously. Hua Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Honey, I'll be jealous if you pay so much attention to other men. Stop it. That was not what she wanted to ask. Do you know who the woman beside him is? She should be his fiancée. Hua Jinyao thought about the rumor. He's not an ordinary person, but it seems that the Qin family has done him a favor. So he agreed to marry Miss Qin. He had seen Chen Feifei once before. She was a sickly beauty. Anyone in the business world who knew a thing or two about the Qin family would have heard that the daughter of the Qin family was frail and sickly. However, the Qin family's family head had good foresight. He had saved Zhang Haoze in the early years and trained him carefully. Now he had become an existence like Chen Feifei's guard. Is that so? Su Qingsang thought of Shi Mingwan. Shi Mingwan had always said that Zhang Haoze was her big brother. Chapter 193. Do you like him? What are you talking about? It was the first time she saw Zhang Haoze. How could she like him? Then why do you keep asking about him? Hua Jinyao raised his hand and put it on her shoulder. You've never cared about me like this. Hua Jinyao, that's enough. She just asked a few more questions for Shi Mingwan. If it weren't for Shi Mingwan, she wouldn't have cared about who Zhang Haoze was. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang's expression. His pestering expression faded a little. However, he was a little annoyed with Zhang Haoze. That guy mentioned Tianyu on purpose. Not only in the industry but in the whole country who didn't know about Tianyu. Fortunately, Su Qingsang devoted herself to her profession and didn't pay attention to these things. Otherwise, how could she know nothing about it? It seemed that he had to find something for Zhang Haoze to do next time, in case he talked nonsense. However, thinking that Zhang Haoze was forced to get married by the Qin family, he gloated again. Are you hungry? Why don't you drive? Su Qingsang turned around and saw him smiling a little strangely. That expression made her frown. Let's go. Su Qingsang was enjoying the mountain breeze. She was so comfortable that she didn't think about where she had heard the name Tianyu before. After dinner they went to watch a movie. When they got home, Su Qingsang was already very tired. However, her tired body felt much better after taking a shower. She couldn't fall asleep, so she took out her phone. Habitually, she opened Weibo and glanced at it. The top local trending news made her forehead twitch again. She hadn't opened Weibo for half a day and found that things were out of control again. Those reporters didn't know what was going on, so they all blamed Su Qingsang. Some even dug out Su Qingsang's identity and said that she was the illegitimate daughter of the Su family. She couldn't be shown in public, so it was no wonder that she was so cruel. This wave of insults and attacks was much more severe than yesterday's. Su Qingsang casually browsed through it and couldn't read it anymore. In the past, she only knew that there were keyboard warriors in this world. Today she met one and understood what it felt like. As soon as Hua Jinyao entered the room, he saw her sullen face and then looked at the phone in her hand. What else could he not understand? He took a few steps forward, took her phone away and put it aside. Then he sat down beside her. Why do you look like that? Why do you care about these trolls on the internet? Su Qingsang shook her head. He wasn't her, so how could he understand? Just some irrelevant people. How is it worth your anger? Hua Jinyao pulled her into his arms as he spoke. Don't worry. The more they scold you today, the more painful the slap in the face will be when the truth is clarified tomorrow. How can it be as easy as you say? Su Qingsang still didn't believe him. You make it sound easy. Li Rongrong, do you believe me? Hua Jinyao put his arm around her waist, insisting on an answer from her. Su Qingsang looked at him and finally nodded. I believe you. Since you trust me, then wait and be patient. They like to scold, let them scold. Curse to your heart's content. By tomorrow at the latest, the matter will be resolved. He sounded really confident. Su Qingsang was nervous, but now she could only choose to believe him. Well, I think you're just too free. As Hua Jinyao spoke, He turned over and lay on top of her. I think we need to do something else. You can divert your attention. Chapter 194. Li Rongrong went to sleep after talking nonsense in front of the reporters. Most doctors and nurses didn't believe the rumors. They had seen Hu Jinyao before. Yesterday when Wei Lenin came, a nurse also saw him. With such an outstanding man like Hu Jinyao as a comparison, Wei Lenin looked like a scumbag. Li Rongrong wasn't afraid that the nurses didn't like her. She had a caretaker to take care of her. What were the nurses? There were reporters who came to ask about the situation, and the nurses told them the truth. But the reporters didn't write about the situation. Instead, they wrote that Su Qingsang hated Li Rongrong because she had to find someone else. They hadn't seen Hu Jinyao, but Wei Lenin was famous in Lin City. What else didn't they understand when they compared it and asked about it? If they understood it, the news would be distorted. Li Rongrong didn't even take care of her body. She started browsing Weibo and local forums after she woke up. The more people scolded Su Qingsang, the happier she was. How dare you steal my man? How dare you push me? At night, Li Rongrong asked the caretaker to buy food for her. She didn't like the food in the hospital. The caretaker left to buy dinner for Li Rongrong. Not long after she left, the door of the ward was opened. Did you buy it? I said I want to eat. Who are you? Li Rongrong was shocked to see a stranger enter her ward. She sat up and looked at the person in front of her warily. Su Qingsang was harassed by Hu Jinyao for the whole night, so she didn't have time to think about Li Rongrong. The next day, Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable all over. She criticized Hu Jinyao in her heart. This man was too much. He didn't know how to control himself. She was so weak that she was afraid that one day she would be killed by Hu Jinyao. She picked up her phone and wanted to browse Weibo, but she didn't want to see more curses. She put down her phone and it rang again. It was sure Mengwan again. Mengwan. Su Qingsang received her call and thought of Zhang Haoza. I have something to talk to you about. You, don't bother. I know everything. What do you know? What do you think I know? Sure Mengwan's voice was relaxed. She was so worried yesterday that she even seriously explained to Su Qingsang on Weibo. It was a pity that she was small and insignificant. There was no way she could overwhelm so many internet trolls and keyboard warriors. Now that the matter was resolved, she heaved a sigh of relief. How would I know what you know if you don't tell me? All right. Sure Mengwan was confused by the fact that she knew more. You must have known about it before me. You must have checked Weibo. What are you trying to do here? No. Su Qingsang shook her head, pressed the speaker button and opened Weibo. I haven't checked Weibo today. That's good. I'm the first one to inform you. Su Qingsang didn't hear what Sure Mengwan said clearly. She clicked on the latest local news. Hashtag the prettiest doctor hashtag is still the prettiest doctor. There was a video on it, but she didn't have time to watch it. She glanced at the title and the following article, and the twist in the article made her eyes widen. I won't tell you now. I'll take a look first. What was going on? As she clicked on the video, she heard the door open. You're awake. Chapter 195. Li Rongrong appeared in the video. She was in the ward, and there were at least a dozen microphones facing her on the small board in front of her. She looked at the camera with a pale face, and the flash in front of her kept flashing. Miss Li, may I ask why you are holding a press conference today? Miss Li, is there anything else you haven't told us? Miss Li, Li Rongrong bit her lip and her eyes were full of indignation. She didn't want to say what she was going to say next. But, I invited you here today because I have something to tell you. For Li Rongrong, every word was very difficult to spit out. I'm sorry I lied yesterday. I wasn't pushed down the stairs by Dr. Su Qingsang. What? There were more than a dozen reporters who rushed into the ward, and they all looked at each other. Miss Li, can you please make it clear? Li Rongrong was very angry, but thinking that they had something on her, she had to compromise. The truth is that the child in my belly was already stillborn. As early as a week ago, I had a checkup, and another doctor said that the child had no heartbeat. They asked me to take the child out. I didn't want to. I wanted the child, but after a few days of observation, the child was still the same. The doctor said that it would be dangerous if I didn't abort it. Then I thought that if I abort the child, I might as well use it to do something. Li Rongrong's voice was getting softer and softer. It was so soft that it was almost inaudible. Su Qingsang's eyes widened and she looked at Hu Jinyao who had sat next to her in shock. Hu Jinyao nodded and motioned for her to continue watching. What else needed to be said? Li Rongrong wanted to use the child to harm her, and she really succeeded. Su Qingsang turned from the most beautiful doctor to the most vicious one. She also played a big role in it. She was not short of money, so it was not difficult for her to buy the hot search results and hire a water army. The reporters were shocked. One of them sensed that something was wrong. Miss Li, as you said, you did all of this to frame Su Qingsang. Then why did you say it out loud? Yes. Su Qingsang didn't understand, not to mention the reporters. After I lied yesterday, I felt guilty. Especially after I found out that Dr. Su was suspended, I felt that my behavior was wrong. Su Qingsang's eyes widened when she heard that. How could such a thing happen? She couldn't believe that someone like Li Rongrong would say something like that. This completely refreshed her understanding of the world. How could Li Rongrong go back on her words? This was not normal. Miss Li, can I ask if someone threatened you before you changed your words? A reporter's question stunned Su Qingsang. She subconsciously glanced at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao was watching the video. Noticing her gaze, he glanced at her and gestured for her to continue watching. Nope. I wasn't threatened. Su Qingsang withdrew her gaze and continued watching. Li Rongrong smiled. Through the screen, Su Qingsang couldn't see how stiff and ugly Li Rongrong's smile was. I really just found my conscience. I don't think this is good. Chapter 196. Yes, I have proof. I left a medical record when I was examined in another hospital. That can prove that what I said is true. Su Qingsang was not interested in what Li Rongrong said after that. He closed the video and scrolled up Weibo. He found that the trend on the internet had changed again. Those who had cursed the most yesterday were silent today. Those who didn't scold him yesterday had posted on Weibo today. The hashtag the most toxic doctor is a lie hashtag was pushed to the top. No one scolded her anymore. Occasionally there would be one or two who came out to question the authenticity, but they were also slapped in the face. After all, Li Rongrong had admitted it herself. What else was there to doubt? A crisis that had almost affected Su Qingsang's career had been resolved so dramatically? Su Qingsang even had an inexplicable feeling. It was like playing house. That's it? What else? Hua Jinyao's voice rang out. Su Qingsang looked up at him. Thinking back to how he had told her not to worry yesterday, the matter had indeed been resolved today. Hua Jinyao, did he already know? Did you make these? What? You want Li Rongrong to change her mind? Hua Jinyao smiled brightly. What's wrong? Are you not happy? It wasn't a matter of whether he was happy or not, but the whole thing was too weird. Li Rongrong changed her mind just because you asked her to? Is that simple? It's that simple. What else? No, how did you do it? Didn't you hear her? What? She said that the hospital she visited before had her medical records. Is she telling the truth? Su Qingsang was stunned. She thought Li Rongrong was just saying that casually. Yes. Hua Jinyao nodded and held Su Qingsang's hand. In my opinion, even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. No matter how ruthless a woman, especially a mother, is, she wouldn't use her own child as a bargaining chip. Besides, Li Rongrong's baby was over 4 months old. Since she wanted to marry Wei Lenin, she could only get more benefits by giving birth to a child. It was too stupid to use a child as a tool to frame Su Qingsang. That was why he wondered if it was possible that Li Rongrong didn't want the child in the first place. Therefore, it was much easier to get someone to investigate. First, he had to find out where Li Rongrong had made the records, and then find a way to get the medical records. Of course, all of this had to have connections. Li Junxing was the new mayor of Lin City. It was only a matter of minutes for him to call and get a certificate. This was only the first step. Yesterday, his subordinate, Yang Wenchang, and a colleague from the technical team had been busy for half a day. Check Li Rongrong's records and hack into her computer. This was very simple for them. It was much easier to find Li Rongrong's computer. This woman was very scheming. Naturally, there would be some shameful things in the computer. Once he brought these to the door and stated his conditions, the rest would be much easier. Li Rongrong could refuse, but once she did, Hua Jinyao would find someone to expose the truth. That would be a completely different story. Li Rongrong was not a fool. Since things had come to this point, she knew very well that the rest was not up to her. If the other party leaked those things to the media, her reputation would be ruined. Rather than let them destroy her, it was better for her to admit her mistakes first and minimize the impact. Li Rongrong was vicious, but she knew how to adapt to the situation. Hua Jinyao knew this, so she had no choice but to stand up and admit that she had lied. How did you know? Chapter 197. Meeting Su Qingsang's suspicious gaze, Hu Jingyao touched his nose and said, I asked someone to check it out. That easy? It's not very difficult. It was indeed that easy, but it wasn't good to say it so directly to Su Qingsang. Of course it took some effort. For example, I used some connections and found some people. Don't worry, they are all working with the company. It's difficult, but it's okay. What he said was difficult, yet it was fine. Was it difficult or not difficult? Su Qingsang turned to look at Hu Jingyao with confusion on her face. Hu Jingyao, are you hiding something from me? What can I hide from you? You should ask yourself that. What can you hide from me? Honey. Hu Jingyao put his arms around her waist and kissed her on the cheek. Look, you've been cleared of the crime. I believe the doctor will let you go back to work soon. These are all good things. Shouldn't we celebrate? Oh. Su Qingsang didn't think there was anything to celebrate. Think of it as a celebration. Hu Jingyao held her and lay on the bed. How about 300 rounds to celebrate? Hu Jingyao. Su Qingsang's doubts were diverted by him. 300 rounds? Did he want to cripple her waist? No. Then let's do 100 rounds. Not even one round. Su Qingsang pushed him. Get up. I want to get up. Honey, don't get up. You don't go to work anyway. Hu Jingyao, are you going to move? You? Her phone rang. Su Qingsang pushed him away and quickly picked up the phone. Hello, Brother Zhua? It's me. Yes, go ahead. As soon as the words Brother Zhua came out, Hu Jingyao's mouth twitched. He resisted the urge to grab the phone and throw it away. He hated this kind of brother and sister the most. He put his arms around Su Qingsang's waist and turned to look at him with a warning look. He didn't know what the other side said, but a faint smile appeared on her face. Hu Jingyao leaned over and gently bit her cheek. Su Qingsang glared at Hu Jingyao. The look in her eyes was so cold that it seemed as if she wanted to kill someone. Hu Jingyao didn't let her go. He gave her another kiss on the other cheek. Although it was light, Su Qingsang was still frightened. She was afraid that Zhua Hongqian would hear her. That would be awkward. She glared at him warningly before continuing. Back to work? Okay, I got it. When? Tomorrow? Okay, I will. Don't worry, I'm not mad. Hu Jingyao stopped kissing her and put his arms around her waist instead. However, his hands were not well behaved, moving up and down. Hua, Su Qingsang realized how emotional she was. She cleared her throat and said, I understand. There was no need for that. There was really no need. I'll come to work on time tomorrow. She pinched Hu Jingyao's hand. His muscles were firm and it was difficult to twist them. If she didn't have to talk, she would have bitten him. Thank you, Senior Brother Zhua. Goodbye. Su Qingsang tossed the phone aside, grabbed his hand and took a bite. It didn't hurt much, but it made her teeth ache. She let go of him and sat up straight. Hu Jingyao, can you not touch me when I'm on the phone next time? Hu Jingyao leaned over and gave her another kiss on the cheek. A mischievous look flashed across his eyes. I touched my wife. How did it become touching me? Su Qingsang looked at him like a rascal and almost lost her temper. Forget it. Why should she care about him? She pushed him away and wanted to get up. Chapter 198. Hu Jingyao smiled and sat her down on his lap. He leaned over and kissed her on both cheeks. Honey, where are you going? He asked. You're not going anywhere. Get up and have breakfast. She was hungry after such a long time. You're going back to work? Yes. You're going back to work just like that? Going back so easily? Wasn't it too easy for the hospital? What else can I do? Your hospital didn't even investigate before convicting you. Do you still want to go back to work so easily? You have to ask your director to invite you in person and visit him 3 times before you go back with him, Hu Jingyao said seriously. Su Qingsang pushed him away without hesitation. Stop it. She wasn't an expert. Visit him 3 times? Wasn't he afraid that she would be fired? I'm really not joking. Hu Jingyao stood up and stood beside her. Think about it. When did your hospital stand on your side when the pregnant woman jumped off the building in this time? Not even once. Hu Jingyao held her in his arms. His voice was soft but firm. I'm not against you going back to work and I'm not against you becoming a doctor. But your hospital is really bad. Every time something happens you push the doctors out first. You don't want to solve the problem but only want to get rid of the doctors. What's the point of working in a place like this? Then what do you want? Su Qingsang didn't know that it was the hospital's fault. But that was how things were now. Look at those hospitals that had accidents. Which one of them did not push the doctors out as soon as the hospital was in trouble? After all, the other departments of the hospital had to operate. She could understand, but Hu Jinyao's words did make her feel a little disappointed. I want you to go back to Rong City with me. Su Qingsang was stunned and looked at Hu Jinyao. Back to Rong City? Yes. Back to Rong City. Hu Jinyao put his hands on her shoulders. I mentioned this to you before. You said you didn't want to go until you proved your innocence. Now that you've proven your innocence, you can leave the hospital and go to Rong City with me. Su Qingsang was silent. Yes. Her innocence had been proven. She didn't push Li Rongrong. Her medical record was clean and she could go wherever she wanted. Honey, what do you think? Hu Jinyao looked expectant, but Su Qingsang was a little hesitant. I need to think about it. What else do you want? Hu Jinyao tried to persuade her. Since you and I are married, we are one. Shouldn't you come with me when I go back to Rong City? Su Qingsang understood everything he said, but following a man to another city, a city in the north that was completely different from Lin City. Let me think about it. All right. There was no hurry. I'll wait for you to think it through. Hu Jinyao didn't want to put more pressure on her. But I also hope that you won't take too long to think about it. Su Qingsang nodded. Given the current situation, even if she wanted to think about it for a long time, it wouldn't work. She went to the bathroom to wash up. Just as she squeezed out the toothpaste, Hu Jinyao came in again. And Li Rongrong, have you decided what to do with her? Li Rongrong? Su Qingsang was confused and stopped brushing her teeth. What do you mean? She slandered you and almost got you suspended. Don't you want to take revenge on her? Chapter 199. Su Qingsang frowned. After brushing her teeth, she put the toothbrush aside and said, Didn't she already admit it? If so, her reputation will be ruined. Let's forget about it. It was not that she was soft-hearted, nor was she a saint. She just didn't want to waste time on these things. Hu Jinyao was not surprised at her answer at all. This time she was so soft-hearted because it was solved in time. Li Rongrong's state at that time was that she couldn't wait to kill Su Qingsang. How could he allow such a thing to happen? This time he was lucky. His people found some good things in Li Rongrong's computer. But what if there was nothing in Li Rongrong's computer that could threaten her? What if Li Rongrong was not afraid of losing her reputation and tried to drag Su Qingsang down with her? She would be punished, but Su Qingsang would not be able to get away easily. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang had finished washing her face. Seeing that he was in a daze, she took 2 steps forward. What's wrong? Nothing. Let's go. Let's eat. Su Qingsang was soft-hearted and reluctant to do it, but he wouldn't. He had to teach Li Rongrong a lesson. Not only her but also the person who bought the trending topic. It was not Li Rongrong who made Su Qingsang the most beautiful doctor. If it weren't for the headline, Li Rongrong wouldn't have been so angry that she wanted to bite Su Qingsang. After dinner, Su Qingsang didn't have to go to work today, so she decided to visit Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan was very worried about what had happened these few times. She cherished Shi Mengwan as a friend very much. Although she had called her, she still wanted to see her. Shi Mengwan was a little famous in the wedding dress industry. Many famous brands had asked her to order wedding dresses. She was also very busy on weekdays. Most of the time, she was busy in the wedding dress shop. Su Qingsang took some small cakes and snacks and went to the milk tea shop to buy tea. The shop assistants in Shi Mengwan's shop all knew her. They took the snacks from her, thanked her 1 or 2 and went to have afternoon tea. Su Qingsang went straight to Shi Mengwan's workshop to find her. Her wedding dress shop was very big, and the workshop was on the 2nd floor. She went upstairs and entered the door. Shi Mengwan was sewing the edges of a wedding dress. Mengwan. Qingsang, why are you here? Shi Mengwan was happy to see her. Wait a minute, I'll be done in a moment. I just need a few more stitches. I'm fine. I'll wait for you. Su Qingsang took a few steps forward and looked at Shi Mengwan's wedding dress. It was inlaid with many diamonds and pearls. Shi Mengwan matched it well. The entire wedding dress was gorgeous and grand. Elegant but not ostentatious. So beautiful. Yes, this is my proudest work in recent times. When Shi Mengwan was inserting the needle, she didn't forget to look at Su Qingsang proudly. Speaking of which, the owner of this wedding dress is related to you. Follow me? Yes. Your sister, Su Peijin, made the decision. Su Qingsang frowned. She thought of what Su Yusin had told her on the phone. You mean this wedding dress belongs to Su Peijin? Wasn't the engagement between Su Peijin and Qiu Yanba cancelled? Didn't they come here to cancel the order? Yes. When Mingwan thought of Su Peijian, the corners of her mouth curled up. Only she has so many requirements. Diamonds and pearls. Fortunately, my skills are good. After the matching, it doesn't look tacky and weird. Yes. Who doesn't know that your skills are good? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.